Hi everyone, this is What If Fan. We are back with another part of What If There Was a Different Luffy. Please find fanfic name and author name in the description and please support the author. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Also, let's start. Chapter 361, I am declaring war against you, Big Mom. Third person POV. Skypiea. Luffy approached the golden castle created for him with the current title of God of Skypiea. The place had a Japanese design. It's a Wano designer. How did they manage to do this with gold? Luffy couldn't help but ask, looking at the enormous structure. This is like Wano? Yamato asked curiously beside him. After all, he had never left Onigashima, so he had never been to Wano to really see what the country was like, besides reading Oden's diary. Let's go in. I'm sure Nami is somewhere. Luffy said, and he was right. Nami was lying in a corner, hugging the golden floor. Luffy just shook his head and continued walking to the room that would be the main one. I think this castle is cool, but I prefer the Black Pearl. Luffy couldn't help but comment, his ship was much more comfortable than this place. Then they proceeded to this spacious room, where more than 100 people could fit. The place continued to be entirely made of gold, something that Luffy didn't like because it was so bright. Well, let's get started. I want you to give me reports on everything that has happened, both here and in the countries of our kingdom. Everyone went into a state of preparation for a future order, but I want to see how their current states are. Luffy requested, and Galdino and Yuta handed papers to Luffy as he sat in his prepared chair, starting to read the papers. The kingdoms we pass through are developing very well. Luffy commented, satisfied. Drum Kingdom had finally finished building its medical center where new doctors would be trained, and the kingdom was beginning to regain its former glory. Alabasta was also returning to stabilization after nearly erupting into a civil war. The rains had returned since Crocodile was defeated, starting the prosperity of the desert country while Luffy suggested some type of agriculture for the country. He followed a machine that bought the project in the system with authorship by Dr. Vegapunk but incomplete, which transforms seawater into potable water for consumption. Luffy worked a bit on this machine, trying to complete the project with his knowledge of the modern world. His father-in-law initiated a project to place underground pipes throughout Alabasta in a way that would connect the entire kingdom and not rely so much on rain. This would be executed as soon as they started supplying Wapol metal to the kingdoms. Luminarchy wasn't a very difficult kingdom to conquer after he robbed the auction house and stole from the king himself. He was interested in the giant crystal on the island but ended up leaving it in the kingdom since now, with Doflamingo dead, the king contacted him and practically gave the kingdom away. Luffy abolished any slave auctions in the kingdom, still allowing the activity of selling rare items. Water 7 was instructed to continue making ships, but Luffy asked for some shipbuilding teams to come to Skypiea to build new ships for the fleet. Whiskey Peak maintained a strong trade in alcoholic beverages, creating new types of alcohol that Luffy knew to transform the market. Despite the strong trade between the allied kingdoms within Luffy's territory, the beverages began to be requested by many other kingdoms, making it an extremely lucrative territory for Luffy. In East Blue, the Goa Kingdom was very active and prosperous while the world government had not interfered with the kingdom since Makino was exposed as Shanks' wife and with Luffy's threat to launch meteors at Mary Geos. The kingdom used its strong trade while the trade continued strong, and the Goa Kingdom greatly strengthened the rising kingdoms like Syrup and Kokoyasi, which grew a lot and ended up attracting many people from other blues seeking a better life and finding opportunities in these places. The Syrup Kingdom was becoming so strong in economic activity, a palace was built, and Kaya had transformed her boat-building company almost into a monopoly of shipbuilding in East Blue, providing many commercial ships for the other islands. The biggest growth actually came from Kokoyasi Kingdom, which quickly became the central point of commerce in the Blue Sea due to its location in the middle of the sea, connecting all the waters. The kingdom also began to have a strong agricultural economy due to the creation of immense farms. The capital was immense while the former mayor took care of things as a governor, while the real power of the kingdom was concentrated in the queens who never returned to the country due to being with Luffy. Shimotsuki village was also growing while a project to create swordsmen on that island had begun. With Zoro's fame coming from there and his performance in the war, many would be attracted to the place. Now, regarding a territory he was acquiring without knowing, it was Logtown itself. With Kurter, a man he had rescued with his wife from a ship being attacked by a Cipher Pole division in East Blue, he was a merchant who left his land for East Blue in search of treasure. The world government tracked them, and they were attacked. While the man tried to start over in Logtown, the experienced merchant and his wife soon began to gain power and influence in the city. He quickly started acquiring all the shops in the city and was running for mayor. He sent a letter through his contacts declaring his loyalty to Luffy's flag. "That's very good," Luffy murmured after seeing the reports about his territories. He looked at Makita and Galdino before seeing their reports on the activities of Baroque Works. "I want the organization to expand. We need more members to protect the kingdoms, collect information, and protect the merchant ships between our kingdoms. You will operate everywhere," Luffy said, sitting like a mafia boss. "Yes," Galdino said. "We also can't let information about our relationship get out, although it won't take long, since I have members from those countries in the crew. But let's avoid revealing our relationship as much as possible," Luffy said. Luffy went back to looking at information about the training and experiments, thinking about how he could improve them. "This is getting better than before. We will have stronger beasts than they were in Shiki's time, and with Caesar, I can improve the experiments even more," Luffy murmured, satisfied. Now he picked up another paper, and his expression darkened. "I want Beppo to be called here immediately," Luffy requested, with Usopp making a call to the Den Den Mushi and Amazon Lily where he should be bringing Black Pearl. So, Cracker withstood the pressure and managed to free the members of Germa 66. "And they killed more than 30 people," Luffy murmured in a bad mood. One thing he couldn't stand was his people dying, and he needed to respond. "I didn't expect to do this so soon, but I'll face that old woman anyway," Luffy decided and pulled out a special Den Den Mushi from his cloak. "What are you planning to do, Luffy?" Robin asked, seeing that Luffy was about to do something big, as the others looked at their captain, waiting to see what he planned. "I'm going to declare war on another Yonko," Luffy murmured and began dialing a number on the Den Den Mushi. Beppo arrived at that moment as Black Pearl landed in front of the Golden Palace. "Captain, you called for me." He appeared, approaching Luffy. "Great." Luffy nodded as the phone started dialing. Luffy took a black power from his desk and threw it at a confused Beppo. "Use this, you'll need it," Luffy said. As Beppo began to use it and transform his personality into a more confident one, Luffy opened a map while the others looked at him doubtfully. "What map is that?" Nami finally asked, stopping her admiration of the palace's gold. "It's a map made by the Marines of the New World," Luffy replied. "Here are the reports, the locations of the Yonko Territories islands," he said. After all, the Navy and the world government had to mark the territory somehow. Even if they didn't have a dynamic world map, they certainly had many mapped areas. "What do you need, Captain?" Beppo asked, looking at him seriously. "See this region full of nearby islands? I want you to do that there," Luffy commanded, and the Den Den Mushi finally picked up. "Allo, allo?" A voice came from the other side. "Is this Big Mom's number?" Luffy asked calmly. "Yes, who are you?" the person asked. "Good. Let me talk to that fat old woman." Luffy ignored the question from the other side and simply insulted the Yonko without fear, while everyone in front of him looked at him with wide, astonished eyes. The Den Den Mushi made a huge frown while remaining silent for a moment before suddenly exploding. Big Mom seemed to be right next to it, listening the whole time. Big Mom, who was eating a cake, heard someone insult her out of the blue and immediately exclaimed, "Who are you, you damn brat? Tell me now so I can destroy your entire family." She shouted angrily while the other children in the room looked stunned, wondering who would dare insult their mother like that. "I am Monkey D. Luffy." "I doubt you can back up your words," Luffy replied calmly. "You!" Big Mom exclaimed, surprised by this. "How did you get my number?" she immediately demanded. It doesn't matter, you fat old woman, Luffy said again, leaving everyone in the room shocked as Big Mom's face looked stunned before seeming to go mad. Do you have any idea who you are talking to? She exclaimed, appearing on the verge of losing control. Let me tell you the reason for my call. Your son Cracker has made me quite furious this time. Killing some of my soldiers is something I will not forgive, Luffy began, while Big Mom looked a bit confused despite her imminent fury. Her children, mainly Katakuri and Smoothie, who were nearby, frowned. They had received a call from Cracker as soon as the war ended. He and Germa 66 were almost back in their territory at that moment, saying he had managed to escape from the Straw Hat on an island in the sky. So, the siblings finally sighed in relief, seeing that despite the surprising strength of the Straw Hat, their brother would finally return alive. They didn't want to go to war against the crew, not now, but Luffy's call seemed to be taking a different turn. What do you mean? Big Mom immediately asked, angrily. You idiot woman, your son came to attack me a while ago. I beat him up and imprisoned him, but he escaped from my prison some time later and killed several soldiers who worked for me. Tell me, Big Mom, what would you do at this moment? Luffy asked with a tone of anger. What? He was imprisoned? Big Mom exclaimed, surprised by this information she hadn't known until then. Well, that doesn't matter now. The important thing is that this is my answer, Lin Lin. I am declaring war against you, you damn fat old woman. Luffy wasted no time finishing, while Big Mom was perplexed by someone acting this way towards her, as no one ever did that. I will kill you, brat. Come to the new world. Big Mom exclaimed, starting to lose control of her anger. I will do that soon, but here is my answer. And you better look at the sky. Luffy said while Beepo was no longer in the room. Big Mom was confused, but it didn't take long for a soldier with a soul that the Yonko had stolen to come running into the room. Mama, Mama, he exclaimed. Meteors are coming here. The toy looked scared while Big Mom quickly got up and looked out the window with all her children. They all widened their eyes in astonishment as 6 meteors began to fall towards them and all the islands. Chapter 362 Preparations for Training. Third-person POV. Skypiea. In the midst of the ancient main island of Shiki, with its headquarters in the middle of the forests, many men who were former subordinates of Shiki and now members of his fleet, carefully watched 4 people, one of them being Luffy himself, who was staring at the enormous creature in front of him, a gigantic elephant, lying on the ground with thick chains wrapped around it after it had lost consciousness to have its blood drawn. This animal was being studied after its genetics had been enhanced in the past few months a little before they left Skypiea to continue their adventures. One of the subordinates brought the collected blood of the animal while Chopper took it, carrying it to a piece of equipment and looking through a microscope. Luffy was waiting to see Chopper's report. By his side were Shiki's scientist and Caesar, who was quite well behaved beside him, as he could do nothing but obey Luffy, now that his heart had been removed by Lamy after Luffy's request. It had been 3 days since the event between Luffy and Big Mom. He had hung up the Den Den Mushi after the announcement of Big Mom's soldiers with meteors falling, while Beepo had managed to aim at Big Mom's island with his wig of trust. Luffy did not know what had really happened and how Big Mom managed to defend herself from the attack or if she really did so, but the news of 6 meteors falling on her territory was published in the newspaper, with some people taking pictures of them in the New World. This indirectly ended up sending a message to the world government that they would have to worry not just about one meteor falling on Mary Geo's. The last few days were just a feast, celebrating the victory of the war and everything they had gone through and survived. Now Luffy really began to execute his real plans. The first thing he did was to release Monet from the ship's prison. The girl had no choice, after all, she couldn't just fly off the island if she tried to escape. Luffy set her free, provided she did not hurt anyone. Otherwise, she would lose her chance with him. He also gave her some documents to analyze and pass on some information to him, in addition to asking her to report on any summary report that came from other places in the territory. Meanwhile, members of Baroque Works began to bring more important documents, avoiding information arriving through a special Den Den Mushi, which could be traced no matter the technology it had. After all, even a call from the Gorasius can be traced. Returning to the present, Chopper finally managed to finish examining the blood. Its cells are stronger and more resilient, it increased about 15%. He spoke and Luffy nodded. It's a good short-term result, however, we need to improve even more. Luffy commented as 15% is very little for his training. The next moment, the elephant began to open its eyes while it roared quickly as they tried to free themselves in the next moment, while the chain strained and all the subordinates looked on in fear with some comments. Luffy watched like an animal and wondered how he could improve it. After all, it was weak, it needed a new dose of superpower. You really seem to have done a good job, Doctor, Luffy commented, admitting it was progress, as the chains were loosening every moment. Thank you. We had some work in improving the formula. With the information Dr. Chopper passed us and worked together, it became much easier to execute and enhance the old dose, said the doctor, while Chopper remained silent, just observing without giving his opinion. Do you see this, Caesar? Called Luffy. I want you to help develop the genetics of these animals even further. He spoke but began to take on a more serious tone. You did a good job, but now with you three in this next year, I want the power of the animals to increase by 200% and I want them to develop hockey as well. He declared. You want these animals to develop hockey? That's crazy! Exclaimed Caesar, shocked, while the doctor and Chopper had a strange expression. You can't do that? Luffy raised an eyebrow at them. Caesar seemed challenged now, even though he was still a kidnapped scientist. Don't underestimate me. If you really want me to do this, it will be done, he said, all arrogant. After all, I am the smartest scientist in the world, he claimed as the doctor looked at him, considering Caesar an idiot, since what Luffy wanted was practically impossible. Well, that's good. Then I want to see results soon. Luffy agreed with Caesar, since he was so confident. He hoped he would do a good job in the coming months. The next moment, his attention returned to the front, as the chains restraining the elephant exploded. He immediately looked at the four and the other subordinates with red eyes, and in the next moment, he charged, ready to attack with his trunk. He's coming! The men screamed in fear. Does this animal think it's Tsunesha or something? Luffy commented calmly, as Chopper transformed into his muscular form. The doctor cautiously stepped back, and Caesar was preparing to launch his poisonous gas, but Luffy acted first. As the giant elephant prepared to hit them with its trunk, he advanced, while his fist transformed into hockey, hitting the elephant on the head. The next moment, the elephant was knocked back, breaking the ground and trees, making a small path through the island of 50 meters before stopping defeated in the forest. The hockey of Ryuo can easily take him down, Luffy murmured dissatisfied. I need him to be stronger than this, he declared. I want you to develop them so they can learn and develop the use of hockey. They will be essential for training this next year and also be a great force for the Straw Hat, Luffy declared. Yes, we'll work on that, the scientists responded. Great, I want you to start now. The dinosaurs that I brought from Little Gale are still in the upper garden. I want you to modify them too, so they are stronger than these common animals. If we could put the same form of growth and strength in them, Luffy said, setting a goal. After that, he decided to leave them on that island full of animals and ended up going to another, where he began to hear a female scream of pain. He approached the place and found his sister fallen on the ground, with several calluses on her forehead, screaming in pain. Ow, 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 she complained with a blindfold on her eyes, while Rayleigh was beside her, holding a stick. Lucy has everything to develop as strong or even stronger than the original Luffy after the time skip. Luffy wanted to develop even her transformation of Nika before returning to the sea, where she would be much better prepared to face new challenges. I see the first day is already quite demanding, Luffy murmured, staring at them. She removed the blindfolds and looked at her brother. It hurts, Uncle Rayleigh. This old sand can hurt so easily, Luffy. Lucy complained, but Luffy shrugged. Don't you want to get strong? This will be the best teacher you'll ever have, so learn everything you can, he said. Lucy had a condition of the system that gave her a 100% advantage in her learning. Even without the Moa Moa no Mi at the moment, she would still grow and stand out a lot. And aren't you going to train too? Rayleigh asked, looking interestedly at Luffy. I still need to develop the Haki of Ryuo better and reach the peak of basic armament Haki, and even control my manifestation of the future vision. I can see a second ahead, but I want to reach a longer time this year, Luffy replied. After all, Shanks had a quick observation that could predict beyond a second, and he wanted to reach that level, which would ensure even more power on the battlefield. Even want to reach the apex of the coating of the Haki of the King. Luffy finished. But you won't start now, will you? Rayleigh commented. No, I'll wait a few more days. I want to go to the East Blue still, Luffy declared. East Blue? And what are you going to do there? Going to Fusha Village? Lucy immediately asked excitedly. Yes, our grandfather is on the island at this moment. Luffy said. Then take me with you. Lucy immediately requested. But Luffy denied. No, you need to train first. If you get strong this year, I promise I'll take you to see everyone before we head to the New World. He spoke, and Lucy, despite pouting, nodded in the end, of course. Luffy turned back to Rayleigh. I'd like you to take a look at the others too, if you can. I know your commitment is directly with Lucy, but if the crew needs help, there's no faster expert than you here, he said. After all, he had asked the man to train his sister exclusively and would not be offended if he refused. But he just nodded. All right, I'll check on the crew later, especially those who are learning to use Haki, he said. That makes sense, Luffy responded, satisfied. Now I'm off. I have a few more things to sort out, Luffy said and left that island, moving downward. He headed to the upper garden, where he saw Perona, Bonnie, Rebecca, Kairos, Lola, Monin, Foxy, Bueno, and the others training together with Kuina. As the girl began to teach them about the 6 styles, those who already knew were developing to an even higher level, reaching the level of the 6 styles of the Holy Knights. Luffy appeared at this moment, and almost everyone stopped training for a second to look at him. Anything, Captain? Kuina asked. Yes, I want Lola and Rebecca with me at this moment, he requested. The 2 girls followed him, while the others continued training. Even Kairos was reluctant to let his daughter alone with that man. They went to a corner where there was a waterfall, while the others waited for Luffy to speak. Lola quickly exclaimed as soon as Luffy stopped near a waterfall. Captain, are you calling me here for a marriage proposal? She exclaimed. Luffy looked tired of these requests from the woman, while Rebecca blushed, but he just sighed and shook his head negatively. No, I'm here to talk about your fruits, he replied, as he took out 2 fruits from 2 boxes. This one is for you, Rebecca. And this is for you, Lola. In one box is the Baku Baku no Mi, a special fruit that I want you to use to create a special medal for the entire army and kingdoms, he declared, while Lola looked at the fruit before nodding. I'll do this for you, my future husband, she said excitedly. Luffy ignored her and looked at Rebecca, analyzing her fruit. This is the prototype of Kaido's Uo no Mi. As I said earlier, it does not possess the same power or level as the original. However, it still gives you abilities like flying, creating flaming clouds, and a good fire charge. However, it is still flawed in the resilience that the original provides. But that you can work on over time. Your father is a great warrior. I'm sure you can reach a great level with Haki within this year, Luffy spoke, and Rebecca nodded in the end, looking determined to save Dressrosa. Now, you can eat, he instructed, and both girls bit into the fruits, making faces, but still swallowing everything before Luffy could say they didn't need to eat the whole fruit. They want power. Luffy thought, satisfied with that, and cracked a smile. Great. Now you can go back to training. Remember, there will be no rest this year. So, become strong before we sail the seas again, he declared, and the girls nodded, returning to their training. Luffy then left Skypiea, while the rest of his crew was training at various locations, further improving their skills. In the air, he could see Nami trying to control the wind transformed into Garuda at the edge of the island, while Reiju and Lami were fighting each other, which was not new. Luffy ignored all this and headed to Amazon Lily, where the women also began their special training after Luffy gave them some training manuals. He wanted them to learn at least the 6 styles. He landed at the Empress's castle and it didn't take long for Hancock to appear. Luffy, she exclaimed, raising her hands and running toward him. Hancock, what did I tell you about not getting out of bed? In less than 7 months, we'll have these children, and I want them to be born healthy, Luffy said, now that she had begun to show the first signs of the second month of pregnancy, with a slight bulge in her belly. Luffy also noticed something among his girls, as they looked at Hancock's belly with a gleam of desire in their eyes. It was no lie that Luffy wanted to have a bunch of kids, and he already had many women for that, but he didn't want to have many children now with all the chaos happening. Despite this, it was also good for him to already have heirs, since he was not exempt from death, and leaving someone in the world to continue his legacy was important to him or any conqueror. Luffy decided to let things go naturally. If any woman turned up pregnant, he would take care of his child like any father. Anyway, he just picked up Hancock and went to bed, pampering her, as he often did. The girl also forced him to do this, taking up most of Luffy's free time. Chapter 363, Grandfather. Third-person POV. Skypiea. The training continued among the members on Skype, and as Luffy monitored all the trainings, he read reports here and there with Vivi and Monet appearing in his cabin delivering papers from the kingdoms to him and making calls all the time. The green-haired woman finally seemed to accept her fate while continuing to obey everything Luffy asked and did everything with excellence. The genetic enhancement projects continued with the scientists, while Frank began working on Dr. Vegapunk's projects that he managed to obtain. Luffy wished Enel were here to help him, but the man was already busy on the moon with a project he had secretly given him when they said goodbye and asked him to try creating by placing some things in his boat. This project was the one Luffy had read a while ago in Water 7, before it was burned, but there were still important things he noted with his photographic memory. He continued writing more about his projects while clearing up doubts from the kings and those responsible for the current countries and kingdoms of his territory, wanting to understand their orders regarding the future Order 66. He continued with this for a while, and it took about a week until he finally sighed, seeing that he had organized everything and received the information that his grandfather would be in Goa and would stay there for a month because it was normal after everything that happened. Luffy did a little stretch and stood up saying he wanted to organize a few more things on the island before departing. "Can I see you, my father?" Luffy suddenly heard Vivi asking and nodded. "Just be careful when traveling there. Use this and just press the button at the end if there's any danger, understand?" Luffy said, handing a special alert Den Den Mushi to Vivi, while the girl nodded. Luffy continued getting everything organized while the new members of the fleet and crew trained hard and the others struggled to develop their haki. It was after a few days that he gathered everyone at a banquet to make the announcement. "I will be departing along with the others tomorrow and will be away for a few weeks." Luffy said. Vivi wasn't the only one who would leave with Luffy, after all Chopper would go to Drum Kingdom. Nami and Nojiko to Kokoyashi Kingdom, Reiju to Baratai, and Usopp to Syrup Kingdom. "When the captain returns, we'll show him that we are stronger, right, Broggy?" A giant spoke to his friend. "Yes, Dory, we will be stronger," another giant said with a confident tone. Luffy nodded, and after that, they continued the banquet, and the next day everyone who was leaving departed while Vivi and Chopper headed for the start of the Grand Line. Most passed over the Combelt. Entering the East Blue, they split up going to each of their kingdoms while Luffy was the last still in the air, heading for the island at the tip of the East Blue, Boa Kingdom, while viewing from the air, the huge city at one end and the small Fusha village at another corner of the island. Luffy looked at the island while remembering the mountains and forests where he, Ace, Sabo, and Lucy played when they were children. But his destination was toward the small port village while a man in a bar suddenly raised an eyebrow. The bar was full of security while the queen of the GOL kingdom was working there again, but this time no one could complain as she served the marine hero, Garp, spending some time here. "Garp, you damn! You almost let Ace die." Dayton immediately complained, accusing him angrily. "Calm down, isn't Ace alive?" Whoop Slap said beside. "Here, this will improve your mood," Makino said as she approached, placing a glass in front of Garp, who drank in silence as if he were waiting for something. "Aren't you going to answer me?" Dayton exclaimed to Garp, but he kept ignoring her. "Calm down, Dayton." A new voice emerged as the doors of the bar opened while a man with a straw hat entered at that moment. "Luffy?" Dayton, Slap, and Makino exclaimed at the same time with Luffy there. Garp remained silent without turning around, already noticing his grandson approaching from many kilometers away. Makino seemed so excited that she left the counter side and ran to hug him. It's so good to see you, she commented, flashing him a wide smile as he nodded. It's good to see you too, Makino. I see you've become a powerful queen and are taking great care of the kingdom, he said, and she responded with an excited smile. Yokata! Dayton was another who jumped to hug Luffy, crying like a little girl. I thought you were going to die, you idiot. Yokata! She continued while Slap approached, and all the other guards and ministers there did not approach that terrible pirate who ruled the kingdom and killed its last king. You brought more shame to the village, to the Goa kingdom. Slap commented with dissatisfaction, but he cracked a small smile afterward. Luffy left the three aside and looked at the counter with Garp still keeping his drink in front of him. So you're here then, brat, Garp commented, and Luffy looked at him with a more serious gaze. Grandpa, why don't we go camping on the mountain today like old times, Luffy suggested. Garp remained silent for a while longer before getting up and walking past Luffy. Let's go, he murmured, and Luffy followed him, leaving Makino and the rest of the High Council members behind. Before I leave, I will return, Luffy said as he continued following his grandfather. They headed to the mountain and entered the forest. You prepare the fire, I'll go hunt something, Garp said indifferently, and Luffy just nodded. He knew his grandfather was not in a good mood and ended up collecting wood despite it being a task unfit for a man of his status. Yet he did it and felt pleasure in it, as if it reminded him of old times. His grandfather returned a while later with a giant dead pig. While he took the initiative to cut it, Luffy prepared a large fire, pulling out some spices from the system. Everything was done in silence as Luffy prepared the food, placing these items, and finally they sat down to eat as the day disappeared and everything became dark in the middle of the kingdom's forest. You know, Luffy. Garp finally broke the silence, making Luffy look at him curiously. I always wondered why you and Ace never chose the path of the Navy, and now Lucy ended up following you guys too. But maybe it's the best path suited for you, even though I think justice is always the best path, Garp commented with a sad tone, and Luffy felt sorry for his grandfather. You know very well that there are things we couldn't do in the Navy, Grandpa. I don't consider myself a psychopath, but despite people seeing me that way, I still own my path. The Navy limits you to obeying any order from those bastards of Mary Geos. Luffy commented sincerely. The Navy can resort to the philosophy of justice when the world government isn't threatened, but when they are, they will commit atrocities. You know very well what happened to one of my crew members, Robin, and how our island was tragically destroyed. And even one of the current admirals, Kuzan, who participated in that attack, had to obey orders and committed atrocity, even if his view of justice is solid. Luffy sighed before speaking more seriously to his very serious grandfather listening. As long as the Navy is affiliated with the world government, your path of justice won't always be correct, he said while Garp continued in silence. You know why that Gorosei wanted to kill Lucy when he announced? Among so many people he could have, she was chosen. He chose Beepo because he has the power to destroy Mary Joyce, or at least cause them a great headache. They chose Robin because she possesses the knowledge of the lost century. They chose to kill me because of everything I represent and all the information I have from this world, Luffy continued, looking into the fire. They chose Lucy in the end, and you know why? He asked, looking at his grandfather. Garp had always had this doubt since the announcement of Saturn. I don't know, he admitted. Luffy was surprised that he didn't know about the Nika fruit. It's because of her fruit, Luffy spoke as Garp looked on with a raised eyebrow. He believed that Lucy had a common fruit, although he still believed that Lucy would be the strongest sailor and that she would do great things. The government hides the fruit because it carries the name of a god. The real name of the fruit is Hito Hito no Mi, mythical type, he said, leaving Garp surprised by this, looking puzzled, before continuing. Its model is Nika, the god of the sun. Luffy declared. What? Garp exclaimed, making a funny face at this moment. You must be joking, he didn't believe Luffy. There's hardly any record of Nika, but he could change the world around him, turning everything into rubber and even shaping reality. It's the most absurd power in this world. Luffy believed that this power was even ahead of the power of the Gura Gura no Mi. Are you sure about this, brat? Garp couldn't help but ask, surprised. I'm not lying to you. Lucy would meet her end in the Navy as soon as she showed this awakening of the fruit. The world government fears her power because in the lost century, the government's greatest enemy was called Joy Boy. He had the same power as Lucy, with her awakened fruit, and if she demonstrated it, they would do anything and even kill him to kill Lucy. Luffy spoke. Garp looked on for a while and fell silent, thinking about what his grandson had said. What are you planning to achieve with this, Luffy? What are your real goals for the seas? He asked, curious. Luffy cracked a small smile. I'm not sure, but this world is in danger. I don't know the details, but something big is going to happen and it has to do with Roger's prophecy. That's why he threw the world into chaos by creating this era, so the right person could find his treasure. I want to create a world where there is no central government, a world where countries have their own sovereignty, but still, it would be the one who conquers all the seas. I've always had my will to face a great adventure, face powerful enemies, have my own family and raise my children, and be strong enough to do all this. Luffy spoke. He had always had these ambitions, despite his memories having come just over 6 months ago. He had always thought about this since he became aware of this world and was just following his ambitions normally. I see, Garp murmured. After that, they remained silent, sleeping there on the ground, leaning against the wall. Luffy, in the end, put out the fire and sought his grandfather dozing off. He pulled a blanket from the system and covered him carefully, before lying down near another tree. Garp and Luffy were sleeping like in the old days while Garp, too, couldn't help but crack a small smile while he also slept. Chapter 364 Epilogue of the Second Volume. Third-person POV. Skypiea. In the east blue, an island shook as two figures dashed toward each other, clashing and releasing a wave of haki all around as each tried to best the other in this confrontation. The island rocked until one of them lost, being thrown backward as his body dragged dirt and trees before colliding with a mountain in the middle of the place. Luffy sighed as his body was buried among all that rubble. I'm not at Grandpa's level yet. Luffy murmured internally as he felt himself struck by future sight the next second. Luffy, don't go soft, you brat. Garp appeared at that moment, digging through the earth behind Luffy and emerging in front of him. Luffy immediately tried to retaliate, but in the next moment, he was struck again, his body digging even deeper into the ground, while from the outside view, the entire mountain began to crumble. Luffy fell into a huge underground cavern. As he got back on his feet, his fists immediately layered more haki before he dodged Garp's next move, entering the underground cavern trying to hit him. He moved in to counter a moment later as Garp, without time to react to this move from Luffy, crossed his arms in defense and was sent backward with his grandson's punch, breaking several walls as he continued advancing through the underground caverns. Luffy did not stay still and this time advanced against his grandfather as the latter was already prepared for him in the next moment, and both began to fight amid those natural underground constructions beneath the island. The whole place trembled as more and more shocks between grandfather and grandson's hakis hit each other, and they kept descending further as a lake of lava appeared in the middle of the fight due to their deep descent, each trying to outdo the other. Even though Luffy was slightly less effective than his grandfather, he did not back down as he continued to strike against him. The explosions continued the entire time as Luffy and Garp kept going through the lava below sea level, the entire island trembling as animals began to flee, and once again, one side of the earth burst open on the surface as Luffy and Garp emerged fighting each other. Hours continued while they again returned to the island's underground, causing it to shake more than ever, and neither of them noticed as not just hours passed, but days continued with both solely focused on the fight. Ships passed nearby, but no one dared approach with the explosions being heard from a distance, even the sea becoming choppy with it, deterring any curious onlookers from taking a risk. Luffy and Garp spent 7 days fighting each other until they finally decided to stop after exhaustion. Luffy stood in front of the fire, his arm broken and his face covered in marks with bruised eyes. Garp stood close to him while maintaining his face with one of the eyes bruised as well. He did not come out unscathed, although he managed to fare better than Luffy. You really have become strong, kid, but you still have a lot to learn. Wahahaha. Garp began to laugh. Luffy just stayed silent, not disagreeing with his grandfather. It's true. He then spoke as soon as his grandfather stopped laughing, but that doesn't mean I won't surpass you in the future. So wait for me, Grandpa. I'm going to beat you. He broke into a smile. I'll be waiting for that. Garp also smiled as they spent another night on that uninhabited island, apart from the animals, to recover their energies from the start of the fight over the last 7 days, and they went to sleep. I did this for you. Garp approached Luffy the next morning with a sheet. This? Luffy murmured, surprised as he took the sheet with observations from his grandfather about his strengths and weaknesses, where he needed to develop, and where he needed to train even more to overcome his combat deficiencies. I know the King of Darkness is teaching Lucy, as you told me, but I'd like you to have my approval. After all, you are still my grandson. Garp said, returning to a melancholic tone. Thank you. I guess. Luffy murmured awkwardly. I'm trying to make sure you don't die. You have powerful eyes on you now, so protect Lucy and my future granddaughters. He immediately demanded. I'm heading to Logtown then, thanks, Grandpa. Luffy murmured in the end before hugging Garp in the middle of the almost entirely destroyed island. Take care, Luffy. Garp commented. Will you stay in Goa? Luffy asked. Yes, I have 1 more week off before I go back to the Navy. You're lucky I'm on vacation, otherwise you'd be heading to Impel Down. Garp said with a cocky smile. You talk as if you could really catch me. Luffy mocked. You? Garp ended up not finishing his sentence. With things now calmer, the animals began to emerge from their hiding spots. Trying to see if those two were gone, a monkey and a lioness approached the beach and were surprised to find both the two monsters that had been destroying the island until a few hours ago, standing in front of each other while sleeping upright. Both animals looked at each other, lost, as they started to leave so as not to wake them, returning to their hiding spot hoping the two would leave the island. Luffy and Garp continued to nap, possibly due to exhaustion from fighting for 7 consecutive days. The sun raced across the entire sky as it disappeared in the east, and with the moon, the same thing happened. It was only the next day that one of them finally woke up. A snore bubble escaped from Garp's nose as he woke up. He looked a bit lost, wondering where he was, until he saw Luffy in front of him sleeping with traces of bruises from their fight, while the bubble in his nose grew and shrunk with each breath. Garp got extremely angry with his grandson, sleeping in front of him without knowing how long he had been there. Luffy, you damn fool. You shouldn't sleep in front of others. He immediately yelled before turning his fist into hockey and striking his grandson, causing a huge explosion in the middle of the beach. In the end, Luffy began to say goodbye to his grandfather as soon as he had recovered from that rage attack from Garp. Goodbye, Grandpa. Luffy spoke before jumping into the air, while Garp would go in a different direction, returning to Goa and his grandson, to Logtown. It had been 2 weeks since he and the others had left Skypiea. Luffy took advantage of this time with the people from the Boa Kingdom, but hidden from the rest of the world. He trained with his grandfather to perfect his king's haki coding and further improve his other haki. Perhaps this was the only training he would have in his grandfather's life, so he took advantage of it to have a very serious fight that lasted the last 7 days, and now, with everything ready, he followed to see someone he hadn't seen for a long time, who had settled in Logtown after they said goodbye at Baratai. Landing discreetly in Logtown, he went to a large mansion. They really got a lot. Luffy commented before going to the door, while the mansion guards who patrolled the place didn't see him and he knocked. A woman opened the door wearing a maid's outfit. Who are you? The woman looked at Luffy suspiciously as he still had his 2 bruised eyes and a bump on his head from his grandfather's last punch. I'm here to see Curdy. He spoke, opening a small smile to the woman. Mr. Curdy? She murmured, a bit lost, thinking he was some kind of beggar. Who is there? A stern voice came from the middle of the place as a middle-aged man in a suit approached. Whom? He finally saw Luffy in front of his maid. Monkey D. Luffy. It's a pleasure to see you again. Let him in immediately. The man exclaimed with an excited smile. Hello, Curdy. How are you? Luffy asked, entering the place. Monkey D. Luffy, the Monkey D. Luffy? The maid murmured until she opened her eyes and fainted the next moment, but Luffy greeted his old acquaintance, ignoring the fallen woman. Come to my office, Curdy said, and Luffy followed him. You finally mustana najot visit Ilva, Scorcadoso Isire? Scorialisi bisa lenter, eodori mustana najot undagon Ilva. Marta approached them as she spoke. Hello, Marta. Luffy greeted, though he still didn't understand anything she was saying. Luffy entered the man's office as they began to talk among themselves, recounting his story of starting again from scratch as a small merchant and becoming the main candidate for mayor of the city in less than a year here. Luffy was surprised to learn that the man had pledged loyalty to him. His wife spoke as well, but Luffy still didn't understand anything she was saying. If you want that. Luffy came to a conclusion. Then I want you to start these projects. Logtown will enter the alliance among my territories, where trade has increased a lot and we are militarizing all the countries so they can have their own forces and be summoned in the future. He spoke as he handed over his projects. Kurdy took them and read before nodding. That will certainly be an honor, we will expand the business even further. He said. Kasai Pigagan Bona Dam Government Isi Future. Nike Costagan Dayer Umbagan. Marta also said. Luffy just looked at her not understanding and turned back to the man nodding. Yes, then I'm counting on you. He said. He stayed a few days at the location while talking with the couple. Before starting to leave at this moment, he had called all his companions, informing them that it was time for them to return. It took a few more days for Nami, Nojiko, Kuina, and Usopp to return. The two sisters were quite surprised after seeing their old village transformed into a large kingdom, being hailed as queens. Usopp also came, as surprised as the other two, for he discovered that he became king of Syrup and married Kaya in these last two. Kuina stayed with her father enjoying more time than the last time they met, having a final father-daughter moment. With all the companions back, they began to return to Skypiea, meeting the rest of the members at the start of the Grand Line and heading to the place in the sky, where they would finally start their year of training. Meanwhile, in the new world on a deserted island, a group was gathering, with the man who was the leader looking at them with seriousness. We may have lost our chance at Marineford, but we can still continue our plan, so we will start our conquest of the new world and take down Whitebeard. Teach exclaimed to his companions as his body transformed into darkness with his power manifesting. Elsewhere. That brat. He really gave me a strong punch, but I will make him pay for what he did in the war and I will bring my daughter back, taking her from that damn man. Kaido exclaimed furiously about Luffy. In another territory. That damn man. I will kill him, I swear. Big Mom exclaimed amidst the destruction. She had gone mad after the attack of the meteors and stayed that way for 2 weeks until her children managed to calm her down. Cracker had already returned with the Germa 66, but he had a vacant look with the realization of what the Straw Hats had done to them, capable of launching an attack of that magnitude in the middle of the territory, and his brothers were not happy with him. After all, he had provoked something like this. Shanks elsewhere just sighed looking at the sky, and in the middle of the sea in the last territory of the Yonko, a small boat navigated to another giant ship. The blonde in the small boat smiled as he approached Moby Dick after seeing that the Whitebeard pirates did not attack him, waiting to see who it was. Finally, we are going to meet again. Ace. Sabo commented eagerly for their reunion. Already miles away, at a high altitude, four elderly men suddenly felt something at that moment. This? Sama has awakened, the four elders exclaimed as they went to see the being who ruled the world. End of this volume, post-credits scene. The destruction was everywhere, thousands of bodies lying on the ground. In this scene of chaos and cruelty, another crowd was gathered. There were more than 10,000 people looking at a ship stopped with a man wearing a straw hat on his head. We finally managed to get where we wanted, Luffy said to everyone effortlessly, looking at all his fleet companions who fought by his side in this war. They finally managed to establish their position in the New World, and he wanted to redeclare to the world his crew after reading a specific poneglyph on their journey so far. From now on, we will no longer be known as the Straw Hat Pirates, Luffy said, as he took his hat and placed it on Lucy's head, who had been by his side the entire time. Luffy? Your hat? She asked, bewildered. Luffy just smiled at Lucy. It's yours now. He declared, finally passing on the hat of Joy Girl, something that should have been hers a long time ago, but Luffy knew that Shanks had passed it to him to pass it to her when the time came. He turned to the crowd, ignoring his still dazed sister, and continued speaking as his red haki manifested for tens of kilometers, reaching even the world government ships in the middle of the sea just watching the battle from afar. From now on, we will be known as the Dawn Pirates Crew, the DS. He said as his voice reached everyone within the range of his hockey. Chapter 365, Timeskip 1 year. Third person POV. Skypiea. The seas had been quite rough since the war at Marineford, even though months had passed since then, and thus a year had gone by. Since then, many things had happened. While some groups remained inactive, others had been the central point of discussions in recent months. In a small, simple fishing village located on a remote island, a boy ran through the bustling streets that morning, swiftly dodging inhabitants in front of him as he headed towards a specific place, one of the city exits. "Huy, what do you think you're doing? You almost knocked down my stuff." The inhabitants, shopping at the city's market, immediately complained to the boy, bumping into them as he continued running through the island. He finally left the city and approached a house not too far away, perched on a cliff with a rocky shore below, while the sea waves crashed against those rocks. Outside this house, there was a middle-aged man, calmly looking out to sea. The man was missing one of his arms and remained silent, just enjoying the pleasure of the sea breeze that morning. "Uncle Rotiv! Uncle Rotiv!" A child's voice emerged in his ears as the boy who had left the town approached excitedly, interrupting the man's leisurely moment. "HM?" Rotiv turned to the side and saw the boy approaching with a huge smile, holding pieces of newspaper in his hand. "Little Kim, what are you doing here? And what's that newspaper? Any interesting news?" Rotiv looked at the boy as he stopped in front of him, trying to catch his breath after running so much. "I haven't bought today's newspaper yet." He spoke calmly. The boy, now smiling, stepped closer to Mr. Rotiv, extending the newspaper. Rotiv seemed a bit surprised to see the front page with a pirate group spotted at sea. He couldn't hold back and began to laugh. "Ha ha 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 ha." The boy, curious, gave him a strange look, not thinking this was his uncle's expected reaction. "What's so funny? Aren't they the ones?" Rotiv, with a calm tone and a knowing look, just cracked a small smile after laughing a bit more. "No, they aren't." "You mean they're fakes?" The boy seemed very surprised by this. "Yes, just a bunch of idiots pretending to be them. Soon, they will meet a swift end. They don't know who they're messing with. The world government will send forces beyond what any novice pirate can handle. They will destroy them soon." He sighed, looking at the photo. It's obvious they want fame and privileges, but at the same time, they're courting great danger. "Really? Could they have just gained some weight?" The boy commented, confused. "Of course not. Look at them." The man raised his voice, frowning with a grimace, while the boy tilted his head, still confused. "Maybe they are their brothers?" the boy asked. "Do you believe that?" said the man with a shark-toothed grin to his foolish nephew, his sister's son. He sighed before turning back to the boy. "They are just imposters," he said. "But it's been so long, shouldn't they have returned to the sea?" The boy said disappointedly. "Yes, but who knows? No one knows." Rotiv spoke calmly. "But you saw them. You were at Marineford, you must have seen them fighting. You must know something." The boy insisted. The man looked out to sea, slightly disappointed. "Why are you so interested in a dangerous pirate? It's been a year since anyone has heard anything about him. He just disappeared. I heard he weakened after Marineford. Maybe he's recovering to come back stronger. And just thinking that monster could get even stronger, it's terrifying for the entire world," Rotiv said with a quite somber tone. He was a sailor who had retired after the war that took place in Marineford. He had witnessed the horrors, suffered severe injuries while fighting the pirates, and even lost his arm, but he survived all that chaos and massacre, while many of his comrades were not so lucky. In the end, he was awarded a Medal of Honor and a retirement, living on this island that he had left many years ago to follow his dream of being a sailor. Since then, he would sit in the courtyard of his house, looking out to the sea below the cliff, reflecting on his life and how it all ended like this, no longer able to fight against pirates. This place was frequented by his nephew, the son of his sister, who always came to talk about the event that occurred in Marineford. This island was small, so there was no live broadcast by the Navy. The boy would constantly ask him many questions, with newspapers coming in about the war, wanting him to narrate the battles, and especially asking questions about Monkey D. Luffy, which was a source of dissatisfaction for the retired sailor. His nephew was a big fan of that pirate monster. Ever since he saw that monster appear, he has nightmares every night as a kind of film began to run in his mind, seeing himself again on that battlefield while watching all his comrades dying by his side and in front of him, witnessing the battles of Monkey D. Luffy, a monster that turned out to be worse than Whitebeard himself. He was just a low-ranking soldier fighting against common pirates, while that monster passed by them without even looking at him. It was a humiliating situation, but he survived in the end, with some traumas. Nobody knows where Straw Hat is. Many claim that he is secretly training with his crew, and as I said before, others say that Monkey D. Luffy weakened at the end of Marineford and is recovering, while others say he fled and even died. There are even some who say he never existed and is just a legend, despite thousands of witnesses in that damned war. The man spoke in a somewhat somber tone. Of course he exists. The boy spoke confidently. I want to see him in the newspaper. I'm a big fan of his. He exclaimed. You shouldn't be so excited to see a pirate. The man said with a tone of disappointment. I don't care, I'm a fan of Monkey D. Luffy. He will be the man who becomes the king of the pirates. The boy asserted, sticking his tongue out at his retired Navy uncle. But before the former sailor could say something, the boy looked at him with a calmer gleam. Do you think we can see the Straw Hat Comet tonight? Asked the boy. Rotiv looked at him. Yes, Kim. Today is the day it will appear on this side of the world. He spoke. That's great, then I'll see it with you, Uncle Rotiv. The boy spoke excitedly. My sister won't be happy with you staying here. But it's okay. He spoke at the end. After all, the retired sailor did not dislike the presence of his nephew, who was one of the few things that did him good, despite the rebellious boy being a fan of those he swore to defeat at sea. The young man had become addicted to the story of Luffy, especially when the comet that the pirate created to fight against one of the great forces of the world government circled the world once a month, and everyone could see it one day in all parts of the world. They continued talking, while the boy asked for the 1000th time about Monkey D. Luffy and what happened in Marineford. In the end, everything darkened, and the night showed a starry and clear sky, while a huge purple light crossed the sky at this moment, being the very light comet that appeared after the rotation of the Earth. I hope to see him one day, Uncle, said the boy with eyes shining to the sky at this moment. He will appear one day. Despite not liking that monster among monsters again from the sea, he is not something easily defeated and soon we will hear about him, but I still fear for the future of this world. The man murmured. As the nephew and uncle watched the spectacle in the sky, the child eventually fell asleep as the hours went by. Monkey D. Luffy. The boy murmured in a chair next to his uncle, with his eyes closed in sleep, seemingly dreaming at the moment. His uncle picked him up before taking him inside and placing him in bed. He sighed, looking once more at the sea through the window, before closing up the house and going to sleep as well, since it was quite late. He would have to take his nephew back to his sister's house in the town the next day, but his gaze kept returning to the comet reflecting on the sea as it streaked across the sky. What will happen in the future of this world? He thought, not having much hope that the future would be so appealing. The comet continued to shine in the sky, leaving a luminous trail. Many other people around the world also had this view, and the comet was named Straw Hat due to its creation in the war. It was a reminder that Monkey D. Luffy was not a legend made up, but someone who had already left his mark on the world, someone who had been absent for more than a year, but surely somewhere, waiting for the ideal moment to appear in the world. Once a month, everyone, without exception, remembered him, that one day he would be back. Questions continued to be asked around the world, still. Where is he and what is he doing? Why hasn't he returned to the world? Even those who hated and feared him, as well as those who admired and loved him, pondered this type of question in their minds, some hopeful for the future while others had thoughts not as optimistic as Rotiv. Meanwhile, the man in question, out of sight of the entire world, was in his current headquarters, amidst the clouds. He was fiddling with some sort of engine inside a hood, while tightening some gears with a screw. I think it's good. Luffy murmured, finishing tightening the last screws on the engine and carburetor, smiling as he looked at the V8 engine he himself had built in his spare time. "It's ready to run now, let's do a test," he said, satisfied. In front of him, there was a car that he himself had built. Quickly closing the hood, he was ready to get in and see if his machine really worked. Looking at the car, in the glass with 2 leather seats, a baby's sound came from inside the car. "Let's see if you can handle a little excitement, son," Luffy said, approaching to prepare the test of his newly built machine with his little son next to the passenger seat. Chapter 366 Heirs. Third-person POV. Skypiea. Luffy entered the car, while looking at the little boy with blue hair and red eyes sitting next to him. The boy looked back curiously, making small drinking gestures as Luffy smiled. "You see, Sinbad, engines already exist in this world, but no one has ever made a car like your dad's. This is a Mustang GT with a V8 engine, which I developed myself," Luffy told his son, who nodded curiously at his father's words. Luffy just smiled and put the key in the ignition before turning it. The car immediately made a loud noise as its engine started. "Who?" The little boy was startled at first. "Calm down, son. The fun is just beginning," Luffy said, wanting his son to experience some adrenaline. While the engine continued to burn the fuel he had put in, he went to the radio and put on a playlist that he had asked Brook and Yuta to record for him. Then the music started to play AC/DC's Thunderstruck as he began to press the pedal in neutral, while the car roared louder and louder, with his son looking more excited now. He wasted no time as he quickly shifted from neutral to first gear, starting to release the clutch and accelerate as the car sped off, tires skidding, going as fast as the engine allowed. The car quickly started speeding through the forest on a road built for this in the upper garden, making turns here and there. "Are you enjoying it, son?" Luffy asked as he turned the steering wheel to make a turn, pulling the handbrake with the tire squealing as he drifted. "Ah!" The boy made fearless baby sounds as he watched everything through the window. "Let's add a bit more excitement," Luffy said. He had experienced much to simply enjoy driving a car at high speed, but it was nostalgic for him as he continued making turns and wanted Sinbad to share this moment with him. At a distance, suddenly a giant gorilla appeared from over a hill as it looked at the car moving through the forest, quickly starting to pick up rocks and moving its arm to throw them. Luffy watched calmly, as he had asked that animal to do exactly this. After all, he wanted to test his steering skills while his car began to dodge the first rock hitting beside the car. The rocks didn't stop. Luffy turned the steering wheel from one side to the other, dodging rocks that could easily crush the car. His boy still continued excited with his voice muffled by the rock and roll music. He continued like this for a while as the car kept making tire burning noises on the streets, until he finally arrived below the gorilla, braking right beneath it. However, the gorilla did not stop after all. Luffy had promised a lot of food if it could hit him and threw the rock below him, closer to Luffy than ever. However, the rock exploded as a shot advanced and hit the gorilla's face, making it explode as it appeared burned, with the gorilla having white eyes as it fell unconscious and defeated. In the midst of the smoke, Luffy appeared pointing his pistol upward while looking with an unpleasant gaze. "I told this idiot not to keep throwing when the car looks like," he commented. "Ah." The boy seemed the happiest while continuing to clap his small hands. Sinbad was only a few months old, he should be with his mother, but Luffy wanted to have time with his son too. "At least you had fun. Let's go now, we need to see your mother, she'll be looking for us soon," John said as he left the car aside and picked up his son, unfastening his seatbelt before leaving the area with the car and the unconscious gorilla, while moving with Jeppo to the middle of the island. He didn't take long to see the woman with long blue hair, her hands on her hips as she looked at Luffy like a hawk. "Luffy, you weren't doing something dangerous with Sinbad, were you?" Vivi asked, looking at him in the same way. "You talk as if I do this with him all the time." Luffy smiled, approaching his wife with his son in his arms. "It's because you always do," Vivi complained. "He's going to be a great warrior, so it's good for him to get used to adrenaline," Luffy spoke. "But he's only 3 months old, Luffy, what kind of father are you?" She didn't stop complaining. "Ha ha ha. You say that because you don't know about my childhood. My grandfather used to throw me and Lucy into the forest at that age," he said as if it were something normal. "Ah, why do I even argue with you?" Vivi murmured, dissatisfied, but Luffy grabbed her by the waist and pulled her close. "You're a great mother, Vivi. But I will always take care of our son. Now where are the others? Let's put him with them," Luffy spoke, and despite her pout, Vivi nodded with a blush before kissing Luffy. Their son just watched and started making noises too, as Vivi picked him up. "They're on the ship with your sister," she said, and Luffy sensed it with his haki. They entered the Black Pearl, which was in front of his golden palace. The ship hadn't left there in the last year. Luffy hadn't only been training and developing his projects and army in his realms around the world, but he also ended up having children. Vivi realized she was pregnant as soon as she returned from Alabasta. Her father had noticed it before she did. After all, the man wanted a grandchild as quickly as possible and sniffed it out from his daughter. Luffy couldn't be surprised. After all, they had had hours and hours of sex since they arrived in Skypiea, but it wasn't just Hancock and Vivi who had children. He entered the room where he found his sister playing with his nephew, a boy just like Luffy, with dark hair and red eyes, 2 months old, and another girl with white hair and red eyes, being nursed by Yamato, her mother. "You finally arrived." Fufufu, Robin greeted him, being the mother of the boy identical to Luffy. Luffy had children with Hancock, Vivi, Robin, and Yamato, having 2 boys and 3 girls. "Luffy, look at this!" Lucy exclaimed while playing with Lumum, Robin's son, as her sister stretched her body with the child exclaiming happily. He approached with Vivi and Sinbad. "How's our Lumum?" He approached his son stretching in his aunt's arms, while the little boy looked at his father asking to be held immediately. Luffy ended up picking him up and moved next to Robin and Yamato. "How's Nymeria?" Luffy asked, his daughter not even bothering to look up while being breastfed. "Very well, she's eating a lot, as always," Yamato commented. "That's good," Luffy remarked and looked around for some people on the ship. "Where are Makita and Yuta?" Luffy asked. "They went out for some air," Robin commented, picking up the boy who still didn't want to leave his father. Luffy quickly scanned the island and saw the 2 dipping their feet in an empty waterfall. "I'm going to pick up Hancock from Amazon Lily. I want to spend tonight with all my children," Luffy said as the others nodded, and he started to leave the place. However, as soon as he opened the door to leave, a woman appeared blocking his path, while holding a hand extended on the wall in a pose trying to seduce him. "So, future husband, don't you think it's time for you and me to have a child too?" The woman with pink hair spoke with a confident smile, as Luffy sighed. This was none other than Lola. However, this Lola was very different from what she was a year ago. After she ate the Baku Baku no Mi and began to eat things to generate metal, she started to lose weight. Her formerly round body began to gain curves in the right place as the fruit eliminated all her fat, leaving her as beautiful as her mother in her youth. Luffy had to admit that it was an incredible transformation and that he would certainly be tempted by this woman, especially since she flirted with him all the time, and she did it only with him. "We haven't even slept together and you're talking about children?" Luffy raised an eyebrow. "Then we can easily resolve that," she exclaimed, advancing towards him with puckered lips, but Luffy dodged. "Another time perhaps, now I must see my daughters." Luffy spoke and quickly passed by the woman, who lost her balance and fell to the ground, her enormous breasts cushioning her fall as the other women looked at Lola, sighing at a scene that was quite common. Luffy proceeded to Amazon Lily and went straight to the palace. It didn't take long for the door to open with Hancock appearing, holding 2 daughters. "Luffy!" she exclaimed as she approached. "Daddy! Papa!" The 2 daughters, nearly a year old, were already speaking some words and had immediately learned to say daddy. Both had characteristics of their father and mother, with their dark hair, one of them having Luffy's eyes and the other having Hancock's eyes. Luffy approached with a smile while Gloriosa and Hancock's sisters craned their necks from the door. "Luna and Aurora." He approached the 2 with a loving touch. "Shi." They laughed at Luffy's touch, as he caressed them. "Come on, let's go inside. I want to spend some time with you," Luffy said, and they entered the palace. "It's been over a year and a few months, boy, you have a much greater responsibility now, will you start to act soon?" Gloriosa asked as Luffy looked at her. "Yes. I'll be starting to organize our departure in the next few days, but for now, I'm just going to pay attention to my children and my pregnant wives." Luffy spoke. After all, Yuta and Makita were also expecting his children. Luffy had gone from 2 children to more than 7 kids, not that he could complain, since most of his wives hadn't yet been pregnant. In the end, Luffy stayed in the palace spoiling Hancock and the girls. Papa, will we go out soon? Luna asked curiously while Luffy touched her head as she lay on top of him in bed. Yes, soon we'll be at sea again, and when our adventure is over, I'll take you to visit the whole world, Luffy said with a small smile. Will we go too? Aurora looked at him surprised as he smiled at her. Yes, now let's get out of here. We have to see your siblings. I want you all to have a party together today. Yes. Want to see the siblings? They exclaimed at the same time. Hancock liked to keep them with her all the time here on Amazon Lily. Luffy always asked her to keep them together, and she did often, but not as much as Luffy would like. In the end, they left the palace and returned to the Black Pearl, each carrying a daughter, and Luffy gathered all the children. His 4 children played while the youngest still needed Yamato's lap, but Luffy also kept his daughter with him, and even the siblings played a bit with her there. Makita and Yuta also joined, and Luffy was surrounded by mothers of his children with 5 kids and 2 more on the way soon. This was his real family, one he had solidified in the last year by spreading his seed for the first time in this world, but he still couldn't fully enjoy his family. After all, he had an entire world to conquer, and soon, he would be executing his plan to start conquering the entire new world and finding the One Piece. Chapter 367 Joy Girl? Third Person POV. Skypiea. Luffy woke up the following day feeling some pleasure as he opened his eyes, slightly surprised. You finally woke up. A female voice was heard as Luffy saw Shirahoshi looking at him with a small smile while wiping her lips after giving him a brief blowjob. Shira. Luffy murmured as he looked at the naked mermaid, but not at her 17 meters. Luffy had regained some of his fruit powers over the last few months and could shrink things again, while the mermaid returned to her 1.7 meters, being able to sleep again with Luffy in the same bed. Did you like how you woke up? She asked with a mischievous smile. I can't complain. Luffy looked at his mermaid wife and couldn't help but see how she had changed over the last year. She had matured so much that her voice was now that of a woman and not a frightened little girl. The same could be said of her personality. She was braver and more confident. Her gaze had changed a lot too, like a true ruler, and Luffy was satisfied with it. Why don't you reciprocate and fuck me while there's no one in the room? She asked with a seductive smile as she moved her tail to the side and pulled it up where her butt was, revealing a type of pussy that mermaids had. Luffy wouldn't deny his wife's request as his dick was already hardened from the blowjob he had received shortly before. As he approached and positioned it near the already lubricated hole as he fitted in, it was like fucking any other woman, while the scales on the tail didn't hurt him as he began to move. Shirahoshi looked at Luffy with a face lost in pleasure as he started to pound against her ass, going in and out of her. Luffy, I want a child of yours, she murmured while moaning at the same time. It was no secret that she also wanted to be a mother. Luffy saw it on the faces of all the women, as they felt envy while watching the children running back and forth around the place, or even when he saw their hands nursing the children. Luffy got carried away as was usual in morning sex and began to pound Shirahoshi hard while squeezing her large breasts, and continued this for the next hour until he finally found himself back in bed, with the mermaid glued to his side maintaining a closed smile as she slept clinging to him. Luffy smiled at Shirahoshi before giving her a kiss on the forehead and leaving the bed, taking a shower to prepare to start the day. After all, he had to prepare everything to start his new journey. He left the room after putting on some clothes with Shirahoshi still sleeping in bed. His wives had left him alone early in the morning and Shira was the only one who stayed to enjoy her husband. He walked down the hallway while encountering a baby stopped in the hallway who immediately stared at him. Sinbad? Shouldn't you be with your mother? Luffy approached as he picked up the boy, who did nothing more than look at him curiously. He made a sound trying to say something, but Luffy just laughed at it. Come on, let's see your mother and the others, he said as he continued through the ship, finding his daughter running with some difficulty toward him, with her learning to walk. Papa! Aurora shouted, seeing Sinbad in Luffy's arms, clinging to his legs. You found him! Sinbad had disappeared, she complained with her childlike voice, and Luffy quickly picked her up. Did he hide from you? He couldn't help but smile at Sinbad. Yes. Papa, he disappeared!" she exclaimed with her little arms raised. Luffy just played a bit more as he moved to another room. There were some of his women playing with the children while eating. "Did you find your dad, Sinbad?" Vivi approached as Luffy handed over the boy, giving a kiss to the wife, then went to the table sitting next to Hancock with his other daughter, handing Aurora to her. "Good morning." Luffy greeted everyone present. "Here, your breakfast." Reija handed him a tray with meat and scrambled eggs. "Nami, are you doing what I asked?" Luffy inquired as the girl nodded. "Yes, I'm setting all the routes, but do you plan to start a war that way in the New World?" Nami asked with a raised eyebrow. "Of course, just set the route for the chaos we will create and leave the rest to me and the others." Luffy smiled. "Daddy! Take this, it's really good!" Luna exclaimed from beside Hancock, trying to give a fruit to Luffy, who took it before ruffling his daughter's hair. "Where are the others?" "They're training. Kuina and Zoro are training on the White Sea a few kilometers from here to keep it quiet. Usopp, Brook, Frankie, Bonnie, Kairos, Rebecca, Perona, Lola, Jimbei, Bippo, Chachu, and Chopper are fighting on the island of experiments. Lucy is with Rayleigh and I don't know about the others." "But Hugo..." Nojiko was about to speak. "He's with my sisters," Hancock said with a smile. "So they really are together." Luffy murmured. "You like a gossip, don't you?" Alvida raised an eyebrow at Luffy. "Of course. I wondered when they would have something since I noticed their looks more than 6 months ago." Luffy commented. Hugo and Hancock's sisters had been flirting a lot lately, so he was happy with what happened, especially since Hugo had a sad story with his wife and daughter killed by a world noble while he became a slave before being rescued by Luffy. It wasn't just that, many women from Amazon Lily ended up relating with men from Skypiea. The birth rate exploded this year, but Luffy asked that they ensure that they learned the 6 styles, which happened with some of them. Luffy had 2,000 Amazons with 6 styles, 5,000 Scythians. His entire fleet increased to 10,000 and they all knew the 6 styles as well. Some members from each country were selected to be here and train, creating a unique military force in each country to ensure that they could protect them. "I see. How are things with all the thousands of soldiers? They can already go to the kingdoms." Luffy spoke with his wife, who had let her hair grow in the last year. Nami and Nojiko both had long hair. Nojiko's was a bit darker than Vivi's, so there was no confusing them. "Yes, as you said, they are preparing to leave soon, but they want you to do it formally." Nojiko spoke as Luffy raised an eyebrow. "I understand, alright. I'll do that," Luffy said as he went back to eating. He talked with his wives and Shirahoshi joined them a moment later and talked about a few more things before leaving the ship. He looked over all the activity on the island with his observation haki and his attention turned to an island exploding and Conqueror's haki coming from it and crossing the entire sky of Skypiea. Luffy then went there. At this moment it didn't take long for him to reach the spot where there were 2 people at this moment competing between Conqueror's haki in the middle of the island, making it tremble, while Lucy and Rayleigh disputed the coding of King's haki. Lucy had learned it and became extremely powerful, but still could not defeat Rayleigh as she gradually retreated until finally losing, being thrown back digging the ground, but coming back with outstretched hands. "Damn! Uncle Rayleigh! I can't win!" she complained as her observation haki warned of Luffy's arrival. "You're here!" Like Lucy, Rayleigh also looked at Luffy with a smile. "Yes, your explosions are showy. Just like those of Zoro and Kuina." Luffy murmured while in the distance, there were explosions happening, with both swordsmen fighting in the middle of the sky. "She's prepared to enter the New World, but are you ready for the challenges of those waters? After all, no one in the world has as great a challenge as the sky." Rayleigh spoke. In Skypiea, no newspaper arrived, but always a member of the Baroque Works, the organization Luffy took over to collect information and protect the kingdoms, brought the updated newspapers. Some time ago came the newspaper from a statement that shocked the world, while 2 Yonkas, Big Mom and Kaido, declared that they were aligned to defeat the Straw Hats. Luffy just smiled. "1 Yonku, 2 Yonkas, I will defeat all 4, so let them come as many as they want at the same time," Luffy said confidently. "You're saying that?" Rayleigh murmured as a burst of haki surged from him towards Luffy. Luffy felt Rayleigh's haki to test it, while he himself was unbothered by it, as Luffy just smiled. An explosion countered with his own immodest haki, creating a wall between the two. Lucy had to look on with surprised eyes as both hakis battled each other, while Luffy and Rayleigh maintained their gaze like two sovereigns opposing each other. Rayleigh began to increase the pressure, and Luffy matched him after 10 seconds of dispute. "So you want to raise the level?" Luffy asked as his yellow flashes began to turn red with the day starting to fade. "Papa is doing it again?" Aurora exclaimed from the ship as darkness began to take over the sky. "Is Daddy fighting?" Luna asked her mother while Hancock silently looked up. The entire island noticed the strange darkness with red flashes appearing, and even animals with arms coated in haki fighting some members looked scared at that. "Luffy! Is he going to do that?" Usopp commented cautiously as the others also looked on. But as Luffy was about to unleash that level of haki, Rayleigh began to retreat, his yellow flashes clashing against the red flashes emerging from Luffy, and his pressure started to decrease. "We better not do this again. You know very well what happened last time you unleashed that haki, you still don't have full control of it." Rayleigh spoke with a tired tone. "All right." Luffy murmured as he sighed and looked towards his sister still watching them, seated and clapping. "That was amazing," she declared with a smile. "Well, you seem excited." "That's good, since I came here to test the transformation of your Zoan again," Luffy declared as Rayleigh looked on with interest, unsurprised unlike Garp, who knew the real identity of the rubber fruit. After all, Gomu Gomu never existed. "Do you want me to turn white again?" Lucy asked. "Yes, I want you to awaken your fruit. You're ready for it, you just need to learn how to do it," Luffy requested. "All right," Lucy murmured quickly as she prepared to transform into Joy Girl, closing her eyes as Luffy had asked. She focused. "Now let your heart beat. Listen to the drums of liberation," Luffy instructed as she concentrated with her vision all covered. Then she began to see something, her fruit in her consciousness, while it started to beat like a drum. "I'm feeling it. Is this the drum brother talks about so much?" Lucy murmured, internally surprised as she saw her fruit appearing to her. Luffy murmured, surprised as he felt something changing in Lucy. The same could be said for Rayleigh, with eyes keen to see the transformation of the legendary Joy Boy. Then smoke began to come out of her mouth, as she began to see the drums beating more and more, starting to get into a frantic rhythm. As she felt she was about to beat forcefully, with her heart growing more agitated, while Luffy and Rayleigh looked aghast at the white smoke coming out of Lucy's mouth, she suddenly exhaled a lot of gas, her face deflating as she fell to the ground the next moment. "I'm so hungry," she exclaimed. Luffy and Rayleigh then fell to the ground stunned, their expectations shattered. Chapter 368 Lovers. Third-person POV. Skypiea. Explosions continued happening on one of the training islands, while Luffy coated his fist with armament haki against another huge claw also using haki, coming towards him. As they clashed, Luffy quickly gained the advantage, hearing a cry of pain as the animal in question flew backward with force. Luffy landed on the ground, looking at the destruction he created as the animal crashed through everything, flying backward. "Too weak," Luffy said, while a group of lions, snakes, zebras, rhinoceroses, monkeys, gorillas, wolves, and many other animals looked at him with defeated eyes around him. "You've learned to use haki, but you're too weak with Ryuo haki," Luffy murmured while the animals lowered their heads in shame. Luffy saw this and continued. "But keep training, I hope to see you all extremely powerful when the time comes," he said, as the animals just looked at him, nodding, gaining a bit of confidence. These animals, besides their scientists managing to teach them haki, which was something deemed impossible, had even gained some intelligence and were no longer beasts thinking only of killing each other. They even began to form some kind of society. Grandpa would be very happy if he saw this place. He's an enthusiast when it comes to forests or islands for training. Here, he would be living a big dream. Luffy thought as he imagined his grandfather with stars in his eyes, starting to fight all the animals. "Luffy." Rebecca approached him while watching the fight with other crew members. "Yes." Luffy looked at her. "I wanted to know if we're going to dress Rosa soon," Rebecca murmured while Luffy nodded. "You're eager to return to Dressrosa, aren't you?" Luffy smiled at her, while she nodded shyly. Do you think you're ready to free your country? He asked. Yes. Rebecca exclaimed with a more confident smile. That's good, we'll leave soon, Luffy said as he looked at his other members. I want you all to fight with the animals. I'll check the other island, Luffy said, while the members who were honing their haki returned to training. Luffy then headed to where the dinosaurs he had taken from Little Garden over a year ago were, and he had modified them as well, like the common animals. As he approached the island from the sky, he found a battle taking place. Dory and Broggy were fighting against two huge T-Rexes, while they struck with their weapons in the areas they coated with haki, causing a metallic sound. Nearby, Hachi, Domino, Monet, Perona, Bonnie, Frank, Brooke, Foxy, Galdino, Lola, Bellamy, Bueno, Jabra, Bartholomew, and Margareth, Wiper, Riki, were fighting using haki against various other dinosaurs that also had mastery of haki. As on the previous island, the dinosaurs began forming their own society due to the high intelligence they received while their bodies were larger and stronger. This island was used for those who had already mastered haki and wanted to refine it to the next stage. Luffy looked at the battle from a distance with a satisfied look on his face, placing this group at level 3. Luffy's main crew was divided into 3 groups according to their captain. The main and strongest group, level 1, consisted of all the users of Conqueror's haki, including Luffy, Lamy, Reiju, Yamato, Lucy, Zoro, Kuina, and Shirahoshi. The second group included members who had already mastered all other types of haki and were also extremely powerful, like Usopp, Chopper, Nami, Nojiko, Alvida, Vivi, Robin, Baby 5, Chachu, Bippo, Enel, Hugo, Jimbei. The third group of the main crew, level 3, consisted of those who were still in the haki development phase, like Hachi, Domino, Monet, Perona, Bonnie, Frank, Brooke, Yuta, with Rebecca being the furthest behind, still developing her haki. The girl wanted to go to Dressrosa, and despite her lack of haki, her fruit was extremely powerful, and she could end the members of the Don Quixote family. As for his fleet, the main members were on par with the third group, mastering the 6 styles and developing their haki. Hancock was the most powerful person in Luffy's fleet and had further increased her haki to be on par with level 1. But Hancock was not part of the main crew, as she had the Kuja pirates to lead, and Luffy wanted her to take care of their children. Yuta and Makita were not training because Luffy prioritized their children being born healthy, so they weren't on the island with the others. Bellamy and Foxy, members of the fleet who were forced to join after Luffy captured them, eventually gave in and were now obedient. Kairos had some issues in his toy form, but he perfected his haki training and accompanied his daughter on the other island. Johnny and Yasaku, old acquaintances who sailed on the Black Pearl and East Blue, were also in Skypiea. Luffy summoned them to train, and they were mastering the 6 styles and learning haki while staying in the Kokoyashi kingdom to protect it. Margareth was someone Luffy had given special attention to and brought into the main group after observing her in Amazon Lily. Luffy planned to remove Hancock from her position as the island's queen and place her in the main crew, believing Margareth could replace her. Margareth quickly mastered the 6 styles and was learning a greater mastery than regular haki. Due to the training conducted in this location, Amazon Lily and Skypiea had become more powerful among their territories due to easy access to Luffy's training. In the past year, he had formed a real army of 6 styles, while many main members from these countries and others Luffy had called to train were increasingly developing haki. Additionally, some women from Amazon Lily were also training at this location, and many of these talented members were placed in the Baroque works. Wiper and Riki were the main members Luffy brought from Skypiea and ended up putting them in a leadership position in his fleet, so they participated in the main group during training. Luffy watched the group fighting against the animals while Dory and Broggy faced a T-Rex. Foxy, Aladdin, Bellamy, Bueno, Urage, Bartolomeo were fighting against other types of dinosaurs, who were extremely powerful with haki. They were under some pressure because their haki wasn't fully developed yet, but many were close to mastering one of the types. The battle continued against the dinosaurs, and after fighting for a while, there was almost no clear winner, with most groups ending in a draw, except for a few winners like Hachi, Bonnie, and Perona, the latter having a power that could easily defeat any opponent. "We'll be back in a few hours and show them, won't we, Broggy?" said Dory with a huge smile. "Definitely. Goodbye, Dinosaur-san. We'll see you later," Broggy replied, exhausted. Their routine was to fight each other for a while and then return after a few hours with some rest. It wasn't just the members who were learning and perfecting themselves, even the animals were learning. I need to get the last group of animals, those monkeys on the island where Mihawk lives, but I don't know where he lives yet. If I could get my hands on those animals, I would create the perfect animal army. Luffy murmured, thinking about the animals that learned very quickly and trained Zoro in the original story. He couldn't imagine what would come out if they had genetic modifications like these animals. Finally, it's over. Foxy murmured, a bit bruised. He had a fairly powerful slowing ability, but he was fighting against animals using haki, and he had to use it in his gloves, fighting in a boxing style. The others also had tired faces. Are you all tired already? Bartolomeo started to ask everyone with a mocking smile. You practically stand still hiding behind your shield, that's not how a warrior acts. He must fight. Wiper said with dissatisfaction. Bartolomeo was about to mock him, but when he looked ahead, he saw Luffy standing there, and he immediately opened his eyes with stars. Luffy-senpai! He exclaimed as he ran towards the captain approaching the group, catching everyone's attention. Bartolomeo! Luffy looked at the man kneeling in front of him, as he no longer turned to stone, but certainly acted like a crazed fan. My future husband! Lola exclaimed at the same time, while she jumped on Luffy with a bold smile, hugging him tightly and smothering him with her large breasts in his face. Hey, cut that out, you idiot! You're too forward! Bonnie exclaimed as she punched Lola off Luffy with her arm stretching. Luffy hadn't yet revealed who Joy Girl was, as Lucy hadn't completed her transformation. So, there was no point in mentioning it to her now, but Luffy did give some hints. Bonnie used the distorted future to transform her body into giant fists here and there while stretching along with her haki. She was becoming extremely strong. Luffy wanted her to complete this transformation because that way, they would have not just one Joy Girl in the crew, but two, making them unstoppable. Piranha also approached Luffy afterward, flying with her umbrella while Lola got up in the distance, unfazed by being punched. Luffy, you jerk, you finally showed up. Where's my hot chocolate that you promised? Piranha immediately demanded, as it was a way for Luffy to motivate her to train. The girl was extremely lazy, and Luffy had to entice her with sweets. I want pizza too. Bonnie complained, crossing her arms. All right. Deldino, I need a huge table. Luffy requested, and the man did as asked with wax. In a few seconds, the place looked like a dining room while Luffy summoned various things from the system, filling the table with all kinds of food for them to recover before returning to training. Well, this is your reward for training, he said as everyone gathered around, except for a few people. Is there Coca-Cola? A muscular cyborg appeared at that moment. Luffy took out a bottle of Coca-Cola and handed it to Frankie, who had modified his body over the last year and done various other things. Food, Dory. Yes, Broggy. The two giants approached and started eating while Lola also joined, offering food to Luffy, but he refused. Lola, I need to talk to you later, meet me at the depot at the end of the day, Luffy said to Lola. Of course, Lola replied with an excited smile. Luffy ignored the flirtation and went to another part of the island, where he found Margaret, who hadn't joined them at the banquet. She was bathing after training and quickly turned her face away when she saw Luffy approaching. Why weren't you with the others? Luffy asked calmly as he approached. Because I knew you'd come after me, she replied with a smile. And it seems I was right, she continued, while still washing a bit in the water, not caring if Luffy saw her naked. This woman had become his lover over the past year. Luffy ended up getting into the water with her, removing his clothes and spending a few intimate moments with the woman, who was riding on top of him in the water. You're going to the New World, right? Margaret asked beside him. Yes, I'll take the main crew and start a war, Luffy responded. Is there a chance I can go with you? She asked. No, you'll stay here. We'll first conquer the first part of that sea, then we'll go to Wano and bring the fleet. That's when you'll come into action, Luffy explained, while the blonde girl listened attentively. Can I join too? A new voice emerged as Margaret looked surprised, seeing Riki, the Shandian member who flirted with Luffy because he was a powerful warrior who defeated Enel and ended up also becoming his lover like Margaret. Riki immediately took off her clothes and jumped into the water with them. After another intimate moment, Luffy bid farewell to the two women as they returned to fight the dinosaurs again. Luffy resumed his activities on other islands and met Lola in the late afternoon at the metal depot, where only common ingots were stored. "Lola, I need you to turn this into Wapple metal." "The same, Lola metal that you like to use," Luffy requested. "After that, we'll turn it into weapons in the factories." Lola smiled seductively upon hearing the request and began to undress in front of Luffy, the future pirate king or sea emperor, who looked at her with a raised eyebrow. "How about this?" "I'll do it, but first, you have to satisfy me," she said with a provocative look. Luffy found himself in a dilemma but eventually gave in. Although Lola hadn't been his type before, she was now an extremely beautiful woman, perhaps even more beautiful than Hancock. He began to reciprocate her desire at that moment. "Racoon here, sorry if I'm making it seem like Luffy is having sex with everyone in some of the chapters, but I don't see why he wouldn't have a large number of partners. Even though the wives will be selected, he will have many lovers who will become concubines in the future. After all, an emperor needs his large harem. I'm thinking of turning into wives in the future, Kuina, Bonnie, Rebecca. But these girls are all underage, so it will take a few years. Lola, Kazuki Hiyori, and Viola will also be wives in the future, while the others will remain as lovers/concubines only. What do you think of this scenario?" Chapter 369, The Most Wanted Gang in the World. Third-person POV. Skypiea. Luffy was sitting in his cabin while looking at the reports in front of him. The first paper was about mapping Skypiea, where every flying island had a purpose. The islands were summarized as follows. The main island, Skypiea, was structured into the Upper Yard and the City of Angels, which lay beneath in the Sea of Clouds. Amazon Lily, home to the Kuja pirates and the Amazons. Shiki's headquarters, where there was the main laboratory for animal modifications. Luffy built a weapons factory there while Lola transformed the metals they brought from other places, building weapons. Caesar Claus assisted in weapon creation along with Frankie, who also constructed a laboratory for his own creations. There were 5 islands with transformed animals, where they had already formed their own society and learned to fight all day long. One island housed dinosaurs. There was also Little Garden itself, where Luffy had asked Beepo to remove the island from the sea 6 months ago and bring them to the sky, where he could have a large number of these dinosaurs for experiments, but the island was still untouched. It had many plants that Chopper used to make medicines. Setting aside the structure of Skypiea, he read another report about countries reporting economic growth, trade, and military strength while Luffy managed to improve the quality of life for the people living there. After all, they are his people and he wants them all to thrive. These reports were sent by Baroque Works, but now he set them aside as he needed to know about activities in the New World and his organization was not yet operational there. He dropped the papers and looked forward, as Jinbei, who had been out of Skypiea for the last few weeks, returned today with new reports Luffy had requested from the New World. "Let me see them," Luffy requested as Jinbei approached, handing over the papers while Luffy began to read. Jinbei had been sent to Fishman Island and the New World to gather some information, some of it from Viola, his spy. "Big Mom is still bothering to try and take Fishman Island," Luffy murmured as Jinbei nodded. "However, she doesn't dare take it directly," Jinbei said. After all, Luffy had already shown that they could attack from a distance, and she wouldn't even leave her territory to take revenge on Luffy with him being able to attack them. So this year, she allied with Kaido and was waiting for Luffy to arrive in the New World. "Fishman Island is mine, there is nothing to discuss about that," Luffy declared, and Jinbei simply nodded. "Captain." Jinbei seemed hesitant as Luffy looked at him sighing. "I know what you're thinking, Jinbei, but we can wait a bit longer. We'll be heading to the New World soon. A lot has happened in this half-year since things completely changed in the New World. It won't be 1 or 2 days that will make a big difference," Luffy said. "So we're going soon, Captain," he said with a hopeful tone. "Yes, I want you to get ready, we'll be departing soon." "We're in the final preparations," Luffy said as Jinbei nodded before leaving. Luffy sighed while reading the movements in the New World, first about the fall of Whitebeard 6 months ago. Since then, the remnants of the fleet have been fighting against Blackbeard and his crew, which also made the New World restless. After all, Kaido and Big Mom also took the opportunity to grab some territories. Ace and the other commanders fought tooth and nail, but in the end, they were losing in a scenario against 3 Yonkas. Now that Whitebeard was also recognized by the world as such, only maintaining some of the territories trying to protect them. Luffy was a bit sad about the death of Whitebeard. His last farewell with the old man was really as he had foreseen, the last contact he had with the strongest man in the world, but there was nothing he could do about it. Whitebeard had his own adventure on the sea, and he was training to prepare for his own, and as if by fate, Teach managed to get the power of the shock fruit. Luffy was also excited to face Blackbeard, at least now he was more powerful, and Luffy wanted to see which of them would win with their current abilities. This excited him. His gaze fell on Domino, who was looking at him while staying in the cabin with another person. Do you want to go to the New World? Luffy asked her. After all, she came to talk to him. Yes, she murmured. Domino had become quite obedient over the past year and had agreed to join the crew in the end. Alright, you get your things ready, since you'll be with us, Luffy said as the woman left after nodding gratefully. How is my schedule? Luffy asked the second woman, Monet, who acted as his secretary. Vivi did that too, but she was taking care of Sinbad. You will train with Rayleigh this afternoon and have a meeting with the entire main crew, she said. Monet had become obedient. What's bothering you? Luffy asked the woman, who seemed hesitant to say something. You're going to Dressrosa to overthrow the current government of Kaido there, aren't you? She asked as Luffy sighed, understanding why she was talking about it. You're worried about your sister, aren't you? Luffy said as the woman nodded. Sorry, Monet, but I will have to remove all effects of your Akuma no Mi, and she is dangerous. I can't let her roam free as she was. I can spare her life, but that is the most I will do, and I'm doing this for you, Luffy said as Monet, despite still looking worried, nodded in the end. Luffy also picked up a newspaper from the last few days, something that made him scoff and almost laugh. After all, this newspaper talked about him, or at least his name, as a return, while there was a pirate group disguising themselves as him going to Sabaody. It was funny to think that people believed they were really them. While the crew was made up of only a few of the members of the Straw Hats from the original work, Sanji was replaced by Enel, who was also blonde, and the character wore some very heavy drums on his back, seeing the effort on his face or even the twisted spine he was having. Luffy would deal with them before heading to the New World. He opened a drawer of his desk and took out a stack of papers from it, spreading them out on the table, while Monet remained silent with Luffy looking at all the wanted posters there. The first poster was his. These rewards were changed a year ago, after the war, but he just kept it, especially the first edition. Monkey D. Luffy, the Straw Hat, 3,500,000,000 berries, dead only. IMG, Luffy smiling with his arms crossed, while he was on the prow of his ship arriving at the war with several Tenryubitos tied up and beaten on his mast. Yamato, Kaido's daughter, 1,800,000,000 berries, dead or alive. IMG, Yamato transformed into her mythical beast form while fighting Kon alone and using Kaido's technique. Roronoa Zoro, the Dark Swordsman, 1,500,000,000 berries, dead or alive. IMG, Zoro with a serious look crossing his swords against Mihawk's Yoro as they both cut through the 2 frozen tsunamis of Marineford. Trafalgar D. Lamy, the Surgeon of Death, 1,300,000,000 berries, alive only. IMG, Lamy cutting off Doflamingo's head. Reiju, the Red Phoenix, 800,000,000 berries, dead or alive. IMG, Reiju striking Kuzan while fighting in Marineford. Nami, the Angel, 500,000,000 berries, dead or alive. IMG, Nami transformed in her final form wreaking havoc on Marineford. Nojiko, the Bomb Woman, 300,000,000 berries, dead or alive. IMG, Nojiko using the bomb fruit, fighting against a Shichibukai. Kuina, the Ice Swordswoman, 500,000,000 berries, dead or alive. IMG, Kuina using her final form against a Holy Knight. Alvida, the Merciless, 200,000,000 berries, dead or alive. IMG, Alvida fighting against a Shichibukai. Vivi, the Princess of Alabasta, 300,000,000 berries, dead or alive. IMG. Vivi using her wind powers creating hurricanes. Hugo, the Titan, 600 million berries, dead or alive. IMG, Hugo transformed into his final form while Marineford looked small compared in his form. Chaochu, the watchdog, 400 million berries, dead or alive. IMG, Chaochu crossing paths with a female dog in an alley in the first city where Luffy stopped in Alabasta. Shirahoshi, the mermaid, 500 million berries, dead or alive. IMG, Shirahoshi using her giant form while fighting with her trident. Beepo, the bear, 2 billion berries, dead only. IMG, Beepo levitating all the flaming rocks of Marineford. Usopp, 500 million berries, dead or alive. IMG, Usopp transformed into Bahamut. Hachi, the six-armed fishman, 100 million berries, dead or alive. IMG, Hachi in his giant form after Luffy used his powers on him while he devastated Marineford Square with a six-style combined with his six swords. Nico Robin, the demon child, 500 million berries, dead only. IMG, Robin using her powers of a demon giant against the vice admirals. Tony Chopper, the cotton candy lover, 10 berries, dead or alive. IMG, Chopper eating cotton candy. Laboon, 5 berries, dead or alive. IMG, Laboon playing on the ship with others. Karu, 5 berries, dead or alive. IMG, Karu playing on the ship with others. Megalo, 5 berries, dead or alive. IMG, Megalo playing on the ship with others. Enel, 600 million berries, dead or alive. IMG, Enel arrogantly smiling while surrounded by lightning. Yuta, the singer, 20 million berries, dead or alive. IMG, Yuta singing in a photo of the musical island. Frankie, the cyborg, 10 million berries, dead or alive. IMG, Frankie doing his strange pose. Jimbei, the warrior of the sea, 600 million berries, dead or alive. IMG, Jimbei just crossing his arms with a serious face. Monkey D. Lucy, 1 billion berries, dead only. IMG, Lucy just smiling with a piece of meat in his hand. Perona, the ghost girl, 20 million berries, dead or alive. IMG, Perona flying with her niece and ghosts. Bonnie, the gluttonous devourer, 140 million berries, dead or alive. IMG, Bonnie with her feathers open while eating pizza. Domino, the jailer, 10 million berries, dead or alive. IMG, Domino with a whip in her hand. All the bounties were there while Luffy said nothing, looking at them, 18,935 million berries for his crew. They were the most wanted group in the world. Only the current 4 emperors together without their crews could match the value of his group, and Luffy knew his name came to almost double the bounty since the Tenryubitos had put a lot of money into increasing his head in the black market and all of Mary Geos wanting to kill him, if a Tenryubito did not hesitate to spend 500 million on a mermaid. Imagine hundreds or perhaps thousands of them hating just one person. Luffy became the most expensive man in the world with a price on his head, and he was happy with this, as they were still in the middle of their journey. The real mess would start soon. Monet, Rebecca, and Greg, who also were part of the main group, still had no bounties, as they were hidden members. Perona had the bounty for being part of Moria's group. Bonnie already had her bounty before. Domino was declared a deserter. The bounty that surprised the most was Lucy, putting 1 billion on her when she did not have the power of 1 million bounty pirate, but he could understand that the government knew that their members have a much higher growth rate than normal, so he could see Lucy transforming into Joy Girl with her by his side. The bounties of alive only almost all changed to dead only, whether because Luffy and Lucy presented a great threat, Lamy for killing a Tenryubito, and Beepo for being a great threat to the government, so much so that he became the second highest bounty of the crew, higher even than Yamato. Well, enough of looking at bounties, let's continue our routine. Luffy said, getting up as he would do the next task of the day before talking to his group. Chapter 370, The Adventure Will Finally Begin. Third-person POV. Skypiea. Ha 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 ha. Luffy began laughing while seated in the middle of the deck, looking at his crew and flashing a joyful smile after hearing some updates from his members, as everyone returned to the routine of a grand feast. Tonight, in particular, was a night filled with banquets, their last in Skypiea, thus making it even more special as all the islands were in a grand celebration. From there, they could hear the fireworks and see the illuminated cities while everyone enjoyed food and drink on this festive night. On the Black Pearl, specifically, were just the main members, along with some important guests like Gonfall, Rayleigh, and the main members of the fleet. As everyone celebrated, drank, and played with one another, Luffy was in the middle of it all, still laughing cheerfully, seated cross-legged, and drinking from a barrel of sake that Zoro had handed him. All his children were there, 3 of them, Luna, Aurora, and Lumen, sat on his legs while a little Sinbad climbed his shoulder with some effort, watching his father laugh as his siblings enjoyed some snacks and curiously looked at everyone present. Yamato held her daughter close to her husband, pampering Nymeria, the youngest of all siblings. While Luffy continued drinking, Baby Five kept bringing him snacks, and Hancock and Nami were by his sides, with Yamato and Robin next to them. All other members were scattered around the ship, like Reiju and Lami doing something as usual, Usopp, Bippo, Chopper, Hachi, Frankie playing with animals such as Karu, Chachu with Laboon, Greg, and Megalo in their compact forms. Lucy and Bonnie were eating heaps of food, Yuta and Brooke were singing while the other played guitar, Baby Five was looking after Luffy while Monet and Domino were in a corner drinking calmly, Rebecca was with her father accompanied by Perona who flew around while munching on some sweets made by Reiju, and Lola tried to reach Luffy's side but Nami pushed her away with a gust of wind. Vivi, Nojiko, Kuina, Shirahoshi, Alvida, and Makita sat near the middle of the ship by Luffy, eating and drinking more quietly, while Zoro, Hugo, and Jinbei drank at ease. Dawnfall approached Luffy at this moment and sat in front of him. "So tomorrow you'll leave us?" he commented. Luffy, while picking up Sinbad and placing him with his other obediently seated children, didn't yet respond to Gonfall as his gaze fell on Yamato. "Hand her to me too, Yamato," he requested, as Yamato handed over their daughter with a smile to her father. Content with his children around him, Luffy finally turned his attention back to Gonfall. "Yes, tomorrow we begin our departure. Soon you will be moved," Luffy spoke, drinking his beverage. Gonfall nodded. "Will we be called to this war in the Blue Sea you plan to wage?" he asked. "Yes, just the fleet," Luffy replied before continuing. "But I know you're worried about Enel returning. I don't mind if you want to fight him, as long as it's a fair fight. I'm sure that guy will accept your challenge," he continued, knowing there was a lot of resentment between them. Luffy just wouldn't approve of assassinations. Enel had gotten stronger than that time, but the people of Skypiea had as well, and some had learned Haki, the key to finally defeating the man who once wrought great destruction here. "I understand," Gonfall responded. "Anyway, how will this war happen?" he asked curiously. "We will move Skypiea to the New World before the final battle, but we won't call any countries, just the fleet will be summoned. We don't have many captains at this moment, but I'm sure I will be able to recruit even more in the New World," Luffy declared. At this moment, the only captains with ships in the fleet were Hancock, Foxy, Bellamy, Bartolomeo, Dory and Broggy, Wiper, Scarlet, Type WB, Greg, and Page 1. Hancock led the Kuja pirates, with 1 ship. Foxy had his own crew when Luffy captured them, with 1 ship. Bellamy had taken his old crew and led them again unwillingly while following Luffy's orders, with 1 ship. Bartolomeo had a large fan club with his crew, with 1 ship. Dory and Broggy were the only ones on their ship designed for giants, but they would recruit more in the future, with 1 ship. Wiper had a set of ships made with Shandian warriors who resolved to join the sea adventure, with 3 ships. Scarlet was a gorilla from Shiki's crew, who now led a group of men who were part of the Golden Lion's crew before Luffy subdued them, with 4 ships. Type WB was one of many clones from Germa 66. They had been modified like the animals, and this clone led all the others in a set of ships, with 3 ships. Greg eventually became a member of the fleet after Luffy thought it over. He developed him to lead other animals once they gained some intelligence, and they had an island ship with a forest, Greg being the most powerful among the common animals. Page 1 finally agreed to be with Luffy. Luffy put him to lead the modified dinosaurs like Greg with the common animals. They had an island ship too. Their fleet was based on 17 ships outside of Black Pearl and the other ships in Luffy's collection, but Luffy was still not on par with the other Yonkas, but that would change soon. Makita, Galdino, and Bonclay were part of Baroque Works. Luffy decided to leave this organization out of the combat fleet while they focused on finding things in the illegal market and gathering information. Bueno and Jabra also joined this division, while Luffy put Lola to stay in Skypiea, and although Kairos accompanied them to Dressrosa, he would be part of Dressrosa's army for the final war. The fleets were for wars against the Marines and Yonkers. The armies in the countries were designed for Order 66, in the World War. This will really be interesting. It's a shame that training is finally over. Rayleigh approached at this moment as he sat down next to Gonfal and smiled at Luffy with his children. Yes, we will soon say goodbye. But you've helped a lot, said Luffy, looking at the old man with a small smile. Have you mastered the voice of all things? Rayleigh couldn't help but ask. Yes, I have almost complete control over it, admitted Luffy. After all, now I can hear any object, anything in this world. He spoke, now understanding how Roger did it with the poneglyphs, able to hear their meaning. You will certainly make history in the new world, continued Rayleigh. However, that technique you possess, it's a shame I'm too old to learn. It would have made a big difference in our journey, he commented, as they talked about the secret technique found in the East Blue. Luffy nodded in agreement, while removing Sinbad once more as he tried to climb under his clothes and placing him between his legs along with the other children. That will make a difference in the final battle, but it is also too early for us to learn it, admitted Luffy, still not having mastery over this technique, which didn't seem easy to learn with just training, hoping that with the challenges that would come, it might finally be awakened. I understand, then let's drink, to celebrate the future of this crew and even the world. Rayleigh said, raising his glass and drinking, looking at the straw hat and remembering the time Roger wore it. Yes. Luffy toasted. Papa, are you going to fight bad men? Aurora asked, looking at Luffy. Yes, Daddy is going on a great adventure, and when you are older, the world will be a much better place and Daddy will take you on adventures too. Luffy said, smiling. In the end, they continued the feast until the next day, as various people were found sleeping in the midst of all the islands, with the party finally ending. Suddenly, Luffy woke up in the middle of the bed with Domino, Bonnie, Lola, Baby 5, Perona, and Riki, who were the only ones who hadn't left yet, and Luffy took the opportunity to rest a bit too. Luffy looked at the last warrior woman and asked curiously and a bit confused. How did you get in here? He didn't remember seeing her on the ship. I sneaked in the middle of the night. You were already sleeping, so I had to do the job alone. Will I now give birth to a great warrior? She asked, looking at her belly. She wanted to have a child like a great warrior from Luffy, as she always spoke. Luffy sighed at this and began to get up, leaving the embrace of Lola, starting to leave the bed and the room for the women to continue resting. The island quickly became a bustle that day, as various troops prepared to return to their countries to put their knowledge into practice and train new soldiers in their lands. Meanwhile, everyone came to Black Pearl to say goodbye, as a crowd filled around the ship. Goodbye, big brother. Good luck, big brother. Yasaku and Johnny exclaimed at the same time, heading back to the East Blue with great force now. Goodbye, Luffy-sama, the other members shouted. Good luck. Soon we will head to the New World to fight with you. We will defeat anyone. No one can overcome the situation, the entire crowd exclaimed. At that moment, Hancock appeared on the ship and looked at Luffy. I'm coming with you, it's decided, she stamped her foot. Her sisters shook their heads with Gloriosa beside them. Luffy approached his first wife. Hancock, I need you to stay a bit longer. I want you to take care of all my children, he requested. After all, he would have to leave them in Skypiea. She looked at the children, waiting on their mother's lap, pouted, and felt sorry for those cute little things that reminded her so much of the man she loved. All right, I'll take care of them, she said. She didn't mind taking care of the children of other wives. After all, they all reminded her of Luffy. She was happy with that in the end. I will become the best mother in the world, she exclaimed, picking up the children. The other Amazon pirates repeated in chorus right after, the best mother in the world, while Hancock's sisters sighed. Hugo approached Boa Sandersonia and Boa Marigold. After all, the three had become lovers over the last year. Hugo wasn't the only one distancing himself from his lover. Even Karu found one, Billy, a duck of the same species, and they formed a couple in Skypiea. Well, folks, let's not waste time. After all, we have a sea to officially conquer. We are the 5th emperor without territory in the eyes of the world. It's time we made our name and turned the entire world upside down. Luffy declared for all the islands to hear his amplified voice as he was smiling, and everyone began to prepare after saying goodbye to the children. After the ship was left with just the main crew along with some others, Luffy went to the deck while fiddling with his hat, waiting for the adventure to begin. Lucy stretched out his arm, grabbing Luffy's shoulder as he approached and stood by his side with a big smile, excited for the adventure. Zoro checked his swords. "We're ready," he said, looking forward. Kuina did the same, with a determined look holding her single katana. Yamato adjusted herself, placing her weapon on her shoulder, smiling. Nami, with her spear, got ready while Nojiko put away her book and looked forward. Lami just kept a serious look while Reiju headed to the kitchen, preparing some things for the journey. Shirahoshi, with a confident look, was ready for new adventures alongside Megalo. Usopp checked his weapons while wearing a brave smile. Chopper had a glint of excitement for new adventures. Alvida, Vivi, Robin were next to the edge of the ship waiting for them to set sail with Karu. Hachi and Jinbei were at the helm, ready to guide the ship. Baby Five arranged some chairs for the master to sit on while preparing explosive cookies, ending up being punished. Chaochu and Beepo joined Chopper. Hugo stood silently with crossed arms and a serious face. Domino, Monet, Perona, Rebecca, Yuta, and Bonnie wore small smiles on their faces. Frank was shouting super while striking his classic pose, and Brooke laughed with Laboon by his side. "Can we start, Captain?" Beepo exclaimed, while Luffy flashed a smile. "Yes, take us to the sea again after a year." Luffy ordered as the ship finally began to fly out of the upper yard, passing the White Sea and finally heading for the Blue Sea. Chapter 371 Monkey D. Luffy? Third-person POV. Sabaody. In Sabaody, pirates continued to gather on this island to prepare before venturing into the most powerful sea in the world, aiming to make their names known and leave their mark in the history of this world, while trying to find the greatest treasure of the world. Since the War of the Best, the number of pirates had quadrupled with people coming to this island every month, and in the last few months, this number had increased tenfold due to the presence of a notorious pirate group finally appearing here after another year without visiting. This group stood out from the moment they started sailing the sea, quickly destroying naval bases, killing their officers, and the biggest pirates in the East Blue. Their first appearance in the newspapers surprised everyone as they had taken a captain into custody, who was smoker in the old Kokoyashi village. At that time, not many cared much about it. After all, they had only detained a few pirates worth less than 20 million berries, and everyone thought Morgans was exaggerating by putting a novice pirate in the newspaper, even calling to threaten him for publishing this instead of something about them. But a few days passed and Morgans dropped another bomb in his newspaper, with Luffy killing the king of Goa, sitting on the throne with a mermaid in his lap, shocking everyone who saw this newspaper that day, and it didn't take long for everyone to get to know the fearsome Monkey D family, coming off the first page with Luffy once again standing out, but for the first time, shocking everyone with 4 people sharing blood in their veins. The world began to pay better attention to Monkey D. Luffy and his crew. Strange things started happening in the first part of the Grand Line, like the disappearance of the huge whale that was at the entrance of the Grand Line, explosions seen thousands of kilometers in the middle of the night, some rumors that the Straw Hats had gone to the Drum Kingdom, killed its former king, and made the place their territory, although the government had not managed to penetrate the kingdom that was not its affiliate to find out, but it was certain that the kingdom began to create a large number of doctors gaining notoriety, just like Whiskey Peak that started to get very rich after creating factories of alcoholic beverages distributing both to the Grand Line and all the blues, becoming globally known today as the best drinks in the world, renewing the market. Even Yonkou were their customers. Returning to the events from a year ago, people were even more shocked with Monkey D. Luffy creating chaos in Alabasta with him, 2 Shichibukais, and a vice admiral of the navy being made prisoners. The newspapers published that the Navy turned the game thanks to the hero Smoker, but many claimed that this was a lie and Luffy took the initiative to hand over the Vice Admiral and the Shichibukai with a lot of evidence against Alabasta, which resulted in the imprisonment of this former corsair, putting the version of the newspaper at the time to not let the Navy's image down too much. Their ship continued and Luminarchy became the next stop, creating another chaos, with rumors that Luffy challenged the very Doflamingo. With that, they departed, so while the world was beginning to wait for new news after the bounty posters after Alabasta, they simply disappeared for weeks. The next news of Monkey D. Luffy came weeks later, while he and a mysterious man and user of the legendary Goro Goro no Mi appeared with Luffy showing off his new subordinate, and they attacked various islands in the middle of the Grand Line and faced Kuzan, an admiral. Luffy managed to fight against him and came out of the fight without a defined winner, something that immediately caught the attention even of the Yonkas, seeing Luffy as a potential subordinate with such a feat in so little time. And the world trembled once again, because after the event with Kuzan, he faced along with his new companion, Doflamingo and Jack, the Drought. It was not enough to face a third Shichibukai in so little time, but one of the three calamities of Kaido. Then the newspaper published the destruction of the island along with the defeat of their adversaries, making it clear that besides defeating one of Kaido's main commanders, he even declared war and called Kaido his father-in-law, saying that he was going to marry his daughter, revealing that Yamato, his vice-captain, was the daughter of the strongest creature in the world. After that, he disappeared. Some rumors say that he entered the Calm Belt and encountered Hancock, taming her somehow after defeating her, as they say after what was seen in the war. Then, the Straw Hats remained inactive for months after Jaya. There were rumors of Monkey D. Luffy being in the South Blue, on the Music Island, but no one knows for sure if these rumors are real. However, the Navy and the government continued searching for him everywhere because, after all, he had a member of Kaido and even Doflamingo in custody, kept prisoner on his ship. It was only after a few months that they returned, and their first stop was Water 7, putting the entire island in a state of panic. They quickly started chaos and captured a government team secretly planted in this place for years and asked for a negotiation with the government. The island chosen after the government accepted the pirates' demands was Enies Lobby, and with more than 10,000 marine soldiers, 10 vice-admirals, and 1 admiral, the Straw Hats did not seem afraid and went to the island, which soon led to a great conflict revealing partly the strength this crew represented. None of the Marines' major forces could really stop a Straw Hat while fights were happening all over the island. At one point, Luffy began to attack Akainu, and defeated him, but this caused the Navy to send a second admiral, Kizaru. Monkey D. Luffy appeared in the newspaper fighting against 2 admirals at the same time, showing that his strength was still underestimated by the whole world. In the end, Enies Lobby was destroyed. The Navy might not have had many losses, but they came out as losers while Doflamingo left without an arm and fingers in a comatose state from the place, as the Straw Hats moved away from the place. The next major event was Sabaody itself while the whole world watched Luffy and his crew beat several Tenryubitos on the island, which left everyone shocked. He fought again against Admiral Kizaru, this time defeating an admiral in front of everyone, and fought against a golden monkey that few knew, causing chaos throughout Sabaody until things finally calmed down, although the island was in chaos for many days. But this did not last long. After all, news of the execution of Port Gasti Ace clouded the Straw Hat at this moment, while everyone saw the next war happening at sea, being the biggest of this era since Roger put everyone in the sea. The Straw Hats disappeared and the war began. Everyone was stunned with Ace being declared the son of Gold Dia Roger and the fight with the Whitebeard pirates began. However, in the midst of the war, the world once again paid attention to Monkey D. Luffy, who emerged in the middle of the war with a grand entrance, displaying several Tenryubitos tied to his ship. Besides declaring that he was Ace's foster brother, he challenged the Navy and mainly the world government, executing a Tenryubito, a scene that no one in this world had seen and left everyone shocked by it. Luffy did not limit himself to just killing a world noble in the eyes of the world. He and his crew turned the whole war around, showing that once again, everyone had underestimated the Straw Hats. The Navy began to lose ground and soon found themselves cornered. Monkey D. Luffy was facing 3 admirals at the same time with everyone witnessing. They managed to free Ace and a Gorosei appeared in the middle of the battlefield. But then it happened. When everyone expected Monkey D. Luffy and his crew to be cornered at Marineford, Luffy appeared and demonstrated a power that many claim was a myth, that no human should have so much power. He had shaken everyone. He simply beat one of the men who ruled the world and sent him into space, with almost everyone claiming that he killed him, able to see his comet every month. If the war had already shocked everyone, the news that Monkey D. Luffy had entered Impel Down and rescued some of his crew members and the prisoners they saw at Marineford added another touch of grandeur to Luffy and his crew. There were many reports of him appearing here and there, but nothing with much proof. Monkey D. Luffy then disappeared with his bounty of 3.5 billion, making the world wonder where he was and what he was doing. The government had sent agents to all possible islands across all the seas, but with no success in finding him. Many things changed then. the transfer of the Marine headquarters to the New World, Sengoku resigned his position, and another took his place after fighting for 10 days against another contender for the position of Fleet Admiral. Whitebeard shocked the world with the news of his death, and the New World became a great chaos after that as Yonkus tried to steal pieces of Whitebeard's territories, mainly Big Mom and Kaido, while a new rising Yonku appears, being Blackbeard, leaving everyone shocked with him possessing the power of the Gura Gura no Mi in addition to his Dark Akuma no Mi, and everyone has been talking about him ever since as he cements his position in the New World as a Yonku as well. For some time, there was nothing more about Monkey D. Luffy. People said many things, that Monkey D. Luffy was so injured that he retired or that he himself had died. Some continued to claim it was a myth. However, a few days later, a shocking newspaper revealed that the Straw Hats had returned and were approaching Sabaody. This immediately made everyone go to the island to meet the legendary territoryless Yonku, wanting to gather under his flag even more so when the legendary pirate issued a recruitment order on the island. The Straw Hat laughed as he looked at his recruitment poster in a bar in the town while the bartender filled his glass, trembling thinking he might anger this man and die right there. "Look, my crew," the man exclaimed while all his companions present looked at him. "We've gathered thousands of people to join our fleet with dozens of captains with bounties above 50 million. We'll enter the New World and conquer it with all of them. Ha 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 ha." He laughed, while the others nodded in agreement. This man was slightly different from the Straw Hats on the wanted posters, but everyone thought that a year can really change a person while the Straw Hat was arrogant and proportionally fat. Chapter 372 Sabaody Again 01. Third Person POV. Sabaody. Command. A sailor exclaimed over the Den Den Mushi. "HM? What is it?" The voice on the other end of the Den Den Mushi sounded weary. "Straw Hat is in Sabaody," the sailor said with a tone of urgency. "HM? The one from the newspaper?" the person asked with a bit more disposition. "Yes. I'm sending the photo to you." The sailor spoke before sending a photo he took of the Straw Hats hidden as they moved through the streets of Sabaody and entered the bar they were currently in. "This photo. I see." His disinterest returned in his tone of boredom. "What shall we do? Can we protect the island and the citizens if they decide to destroy the island?" the sailor exclaimed, scared by this thought. "Leave it to me." The voice spoke and simply hung up on the sailor, leaving him speechless and still lost without knowing what happened. In a room, a large man, after hanging up the Den Den Mushi for that sailor, picked up a special one while saying, "Hello. There's this individual in Sabaody." He spoke. "I see, just a fake, exterminate them with a few pacifistas." An old man's voice spoke from the other side of the Den Den Mushi and the big man nodded. It was obvious they were not the Straw Hats, so with just 2 pacifistas, they set out to exterminate the imposters. After all, the Straw Hats had become a symbol of the government's insufficiency, and letting them roam around declaring themselves as Straw Hats would be a slap in the face to the world government and Marines. Although the man on the Den Den Mushi didn't care much, and only asked to send 2 pacifistas, other people in Mary Geos were already aware of the appearance of the Straw Hats and began demanding the worst kind of death for them, and several CP agents, forced to obey orders from the Celestial Dragons, had to immediately leave the city and bring back the heads of those men in the newspaper. After all, the Tenryubito hated Luffy more than anyone else in this world. "I will go." In a special room in the city, everyone present looked surprised at the female figure, standing up at this moment. "Are you sure? Just to take care of some ants?" A man with red hair looked at the woman in surprise. "Yes. I would give a slow and painful death for them dressing up as those lesser beings we are waiting to appear to eliminate." She spoke firmly. "All right, just come back soon." The leader nodded to her, while the woman went to the window, as 4 white wings sprouted from her back, before she shot off with divine light into the sky, and descended below the red line, heading for Sabaody. Saint Venus decided to act. Agoracii looked through the window. "Let her, we don't have time to deal with a holy knight acting on her own or even a fake Straw Hat. Let's continue our discussion about the New World. After all, Sama is not at all happy with what happened this last year." Another spoke as they continued their meeting. Meanwhile, in a bar in the middle of Sabaody, a ship was docked nearby unnoticed, while several bodies had fallen outside, one because the conqueror's hockey knocked out all the customers who were in the bar and the owner herself threw everyone out the next moment, while the bar was filled with new people. So you all look so strong, really a year has been good to everyone. Shikoyako said at the counter while resting her chin on her hand and smoking a cigarette. Yes. I'm super strong now. Lucy exclaimed excitedly. Yes, she is. Rayleigh confirmed beside her, sitting in one of the chairs and grabbing a drink to sip. It's good to see you, but I hope you don't rob us more with your steep prices. Nami exclaimed among everyone there. The entire crew was practically there while they talked and drank. Now that the bar was just theirs, they knocked out the other customers because they did not want to be easily seen on the island. Zoro is with us, that's a miracle. Usopp spoke while Zoro drinking a sake that Shikoyaku had priced on a paper, as Nami began to make a face seeing that, looked at the long-nosed sniper. How could I get lost? The ship is on the side of the bar. He grumbled. Because you easily get lost. Kuina murmured. I never get lost. He asserted. Everyone looked at him at that moment. And what about that time we went training in the sky and you took a week to get back to Skypiea? Kuina commented. Skypiea got lost. Zoro replied as if it wasn't his fault. Everyone looked at him as if he was an idiot. Anyway. Shikoyaku resumed speaking, ignoring Nami exclaiming things to her, "Where is Straw Hat Boy?" She asked, not seeing the captain. The captain said he went into town, to see someone who was pretending to be him. Beepo answered. What? He's going to cause trouble again. Lami replied. What do you mean someone is pretending to be him? Lucy asked, confused. Look. Shikoyaku picked up a newspaper and placed it in front of Lucy, who immediately looked at it curiously. This. Lucy looked at the group pretending to be Luffy and the others, before her eyes widened in shock. Luffy has a brother? Wait, do I have a brother? She exclaimed immediately while Rayleigh and Shikoyaku looked at each other before sighing. Look! Nami has a sister. And Frankie, and Robin, Chopper, Zoro, Enel. Lucy continued exclaiming in admiration. Not you silly. Nojiko approached at that moment. They are imposters, trying to pass off as us, to gain fame and followers. There's a recruitment poster of him in this bar. She showed the paper placed by the fake straw hats. I see, so Luffy is there. Lucy commented at the end. Yes. I hope he doesn't cause any trouble. Yuta spoke with some tone of dissatisfaction. Meanwhile, in a bar, a fat, middle-aged man with unkempt beard, wearing a red vest, shorts with flip-flops, and a very poor-quality straw hat on his head, was in this bar in sobriety while getting looks from people who stared at him discreetly to not be noticed, and as soon as this man returned the gaze, everyone diverted their eyes in fear of enraging him. After a year, he had returned and everyone feared him, the emperor without territory, and now he was on this island focusing on recruiting a fleet before heading to the New World. As the news spread like fire through the island, more people became interested in joining this fearsome group. Can we join their group? A man at the bar asked, looking at the members of the legendary. I wouldn't, they are inviting pirate bands only above 50 million for the captain's head. Another colleague spoke cautiously. We should ask to join. Let's talk to him. A third pirate at the table said, despite not having 50 million on his head. You fool, do you want to die? This man has the power to destroy the whole island. A fourth said, wanting to hit his colleague before he got them all killed there. Better we go to the meeting they are gathering than we try any luck, we might end up dying here. He spoke with some fear. All right. The others agreed. Hey, bartender. I want some of your whiskey. The fat straw hat shouted while the man at the bar quickly nodded, grabbing a bottle from the shelf. The bartender was walking around the counter at this moment to bring it to him, but it was at this moment that the door of the bar opened. While everyone immediately looked at that, which was a person wearing a cloak, and calmly, he entered the bar. Since the supposed straw hat arrived at this bar, no one had dared to show up here for fear of enraging the emperor's gang. So everyone looked at this individual entering the place surprised, but he seemed oblivious to it, proceeding to the counter and sitting down calmly, with his face covered so no one knew who he was. The bartender passed by him with a bottle at this moment, but without realizing how, the bottle simply disappeared from his hand. Looking frightened to all sides as he stopped, the man found the bottle in the hand of that stranger. He shocked everyone in the bar immediately, while the bartender became desperate. "Sir, that bottle was for an important client. You can't take it, please give it back, otherwise you and I will die terrible deaths," he exclaimed immediately. But the hooded man didn't care. Calmly, he removed the cap and began drinking in front of everyone, leaving them with their eyes wide open. Does he know what he's doing? He's drinking Straw Hat's drink. Does this guy not know what he's doing? He must be a lunatic seeking fame or trying his luck at provoking Straw Hat, the onlookers whispered. "My lord, you shouldn't have done that." The bartender began to tremble. "Get out of here now, or he'll kill you," he continued, not sure if he would survive this himself. The stranger continued drinking the whole bottle to the last drop, sighing at the end. "This is delicious, this whiskey is from Whiskey Peak, isn't it?" he commented pleasantly. "My lord." The bartender didn't know how to respond to that, while a shadow appeared behind him at this moment, making him tremble, and he cautiously looked back, while everyone in the bar watched with some fear. The bartender looked back and saw the supposed Straw Hat himself, who was glaring angrily at the stranger. Everyone in the bar stopped breathing, believing they were about to witness the cruel execution of this man who had challenged the one who alone had faced the Navy and the world government. "Hey, do you know who I am?" Straw Hat spoke with eyes as arrogant as his voice, while he took his pistol from his pocket and began to raise it to aim at the stranger's head. "I don't know. Can you tell me?" The man replied calmly with his young voice, which made Straw Hat even more furious. "Listen here, you bastard. I am Monkey D. Luffy, son of the revolutionary dragon and grandson of the marine hero, Garp. The man who is considered the emperor without territory, who will soon conquer the new world, reach the peak and become the king of pirates. The one who has already, alone, changed the course of an entire war. The one who no one, not even the world government, can challenge easily. I am the closest to reaching the top of this world, and I declare you dead." He spoke, and without waiting any longer, moved his finger to pull the trigger. The supposed Straw Hat believed his words were enough to leave his fame at the peak in satiety while showing he was cruel to those who challenged him on this island. But, in the next moment, the space around changed, as a wave emanated from the stranger, catching the supposed Straw Hat, and the wave traveled throughout the bar, reaching even his companions, who were sitting in a corner. Before Luffy could pull the trigger or even know he was within that wave of hockey, he simply dropped the gun from his hand and his eyes turned white with foam coming directly from his mouth. Both he and his companions fell to the ground the next moment, and a collective scream arose in the bar. "Wait, what?" The outside heard the commotion, in the street of that district in Sabayati. "What? What happened?" The men in the bar exclaimed, seeing all the straw hats falling to the ground, trying to understand what had occurred, but no one knew for sure. No one there knew about Conqueror's hockey, as their gazes returned in astonishment to the mysterious man, who continued drinking unconcerned with what he had just done. "This can't be true. How did he drop them all like that? Impossible. An emperor falling this way?" The exclamations continued. As the man finally finished his bottle, he took some berries from his pocket and handed them to the bartender, who was trembling in fear in a corner. "That was great, thank you. And you are just as I imagined," he said, looking at the fallen bodies, and continued walking, stepping over the straw hat without showing any interest, and then he calmly left the bar, disappearing into the crowd of the city. Chapter 373, Sabayati again 02. Third person POV. Sabayati. What happened? The so-called Straw Hat awoke at this moment, while he calmly stood up with everyone in the bar not moving an inch since that stranger left the bar, and it has been 20 minutes. The questions about what happened were on Straw Hat's mind as he touched his head with some pain, and all his crew members also stood up at this moment. "Does anyone know what happened? Tell me immediately," he exclaimed, looking at the people in the bar, but everyone was too afraid to answer. Nobody knows. Lord Straw Hat, that stranger simply did something and left the bar, no one knows where he went. The bartender replied, trembling. TSK. Where did that bastard go? Let's look for him. The supposed Straw Hat exclaimed as his entire crew nodded, leaving with frustration, leaving the bartender aside, going after this man who humiliated him, something he would not let pass. Meanwhile, powerful people were getting ever closer to Sabaody. The man with the cloak, moving calmly, continued walking through the streets and entering the forest of giant trees, looking for a place to sit after going to an open side of the area. He finally found a place near some old structures of abandoned buildings. There were a few groups in that place, but he kept his distance. He removed his cape, revealing his own monkey D. Luffy, or at least the real one. Smiling after settling down, Luffy took another bottle out of the system to drink immediately after. He had gone to that bar just out of curiosity, wanting to meet the iconic crew that was impersonating the Straw Hats in the original work. Although surprised that they had appeared a year earlier than expected, he understood the situation. After all, the Straw Hat had accumulated so much fame and power in his name that they did not want to wait 2 years of inactivity to emerge with their flag. He wondered who would appear in that square soon, so he decided to wait and see. After all, this would be a good opportunity to start recruiting some groups that interested him for his fleet, if they pleased him. He remained there, feeling someone approaching. A woman descended from the sky with her white dress and approached Luffy. She looked where he was, observing how a crowd was beginning to form in that space. "What are you doing here?" Yuta asked, squatting down next to him. "I'm just enjoying Sabaody," Luffy simply said while drinking. "I see. But then, you don't mind if I stay by your side, right?" she asked. Luffy just smiled while wrapping his arm around her waist, placing her by his side. Yuta eventually moved her head to her husband's shoulder, both watching the square calmly. The search for the supposed Straw Hat by the mysterious man ended up being a frustration for the fake pirates. Quickly, having no results, they called through the Den Mushi and asked everyone to meet at the location mentioned in the poster ahead of time. After all, the recruitment would begin soon. The crowd began to grow while Luffy continued at a distance, along with Yuta, watching more and more groups gathering. "Wait, this is what we saw in the recruitment paper. Those people are pretending to be you and many of our crew," Yuta murmured in surprise now seeing what this crowd of pirates gathering here was about. "Yes, it will start soon," Luffy spoke before opening a smile, before he glanced at the crowd a bit surprised by who was there. "So he is here," he murmured with the appearance of some members he did not believe he would see there this year. "If that mud guy is here, I won't treat them like the Straw Hat did in the original," he decided and waited. Then, after a while, the crowd went into a frenzy with the arrival of the main group, as the supposed Straw Hat approached the place. "They are," Yuta murmured. "Yes, let's see what they are going to do," Luffy said. At any moment, he could simply unleash his King's Haki and knock down the whole group, but he found it amusing. He also began to sense the approach of the Navy, which was starting to encircle the area, even some sailors trying to come to where he was. Unseen, he released an invisible wave of Haki, and the whole group of sailors who might encounter him as they advanced to the crowd, while he still observed the meeting. "Listen up everyone," the supposed Straw Hat exclaimed, already on stage, with his crew behind him, addressing the entire crowd. "Today, you will have the honor of joining my fleet, where we will immediately head to the New World for the first time and dominate the entire sea, with no one able to stop us. You will be part of the crew that conquered the sea. Remember this and the opportunity one am giving you." He began his speech, all arrogant, while the captains in the crowd felt most excited by it, while others had darker intentions with this supposed Straw Hat. It wasn't a surprise, after all, taking down the Straw Hat would bring great fame. He continued exclaiming his words when, suddenly, he went to the edge of the stage and started on the matter that weighed on his heart. "Listen up everyone. There's someone on this island who dared to challenge me. I want you to help me look for him. He wears a cloak covering his body. I want you to look for all the people wearing that kind of thing in Sabaody. Whoever manages to do this will join the main crew. Are we understood?" he exclaimed, as everyone quickly raised their arms, smiling greedily. But before he could continue his speech, screams began coming from all sides, while sailors emerged from the hills and the trees, positioning their rifles and swords against the entire group. "The Navy is here," they shouted. Immediately, the fake Straw Hat clenched his teeth and yelled, "Don't let them get close. Let them know the power of Straw Hat and how we deal with those who dare to challenge us. Stop all of them. Yes. Take that, Navy. Do you dare to challenge us?" While the supposed Straw Hat stayed on the stage, a battle began on all sides, except where the original Luffy was, between pirates and sailors. The sound of swords and gunfire filled the air, but the pirates were quite powerful and quickly began to win, with their captains with bounties above 50 million going to fight. "We are the Straw Hat crew now, sailors. You are all already dead," a captain shouted before destroying a sailor with a punch. The battle continued for a while, as Luffy calmly drank. "These sailors are going to lose easily," Yuta murmured. "Don't think so," Luffy replied, raising an eyebrow as he looked up. After all, he hadn't expected this to happen, but soon hundreds of men dressed as government agents began to advance into the middle of the area. Before they could realize, they started being struck down by CP agents commanded by Tenryubitos. "What is this? Who are they?" murmured one of the pirates as he was struck and killed. "Ah!" another exclaimed, having his heart pierced with an agent's finger. "They are too strong," another exclaimed before dying. "Government agents are here." Some finally discovered and exclaimed. The fake Straw Hat was stunned, seeing his future crew and fleet starting to be defeated quickly. The agents had no mercy, killing even a captain with a bounty of 130 million with just one move. "Straw Hat, we need you? They are too strong, help us." The pirates began to ask for help immediately, with the fight tilting towards the group of sailors and government. "We should get out of here," Zoro from the fake crew spoke to the supposed Straw Hat. "Yes," the supposed Straw Hat exclaimed as he saw that he could not fight there and would use the crowd to give him time. He turned to the crowd in fight. "Keep fighting. I will help you soon," he spoke and returned to his group. "Let's get out of here, we can't stay here," he murmured. However, at this moment, there was an explosion, as everyone looked surprised with two pacifistas appearing in the middle of the battlefield, with Sentomara with his huge axe resting on his shoulder. "Oh, this seems more nostalgic," the original Luffy laughed at that as he hadn't seen Sentomara since the war. "So you are the Straw Hat?" Sentomara looked at the supposed Straw Hat. "Of course it's me. You better clear the way for me, otherwise I'll act as I did with the war and eliminate all of you," the supposed Luffy said with an arrogant tone, but at the same time with fear. "No," Sentomaro said, looking at a fool. "You are just trash. To think you are the real Straw Hat? You are just a fraud," he spoke in front of everyone, as everyone looked on in surprise. "What do you mean by a fraud? Are you saying he's not the real one?" the pirates asked, confused. "Yes, I'm saying he's a fraud. The real Straw Hat would never need a fleet like this, and certainly wouldn't recruit so ostentatiously. You have to be very foolish to use that man's name, when the world government is using all its forces to look for him. You will be eliminated quickly," Sentomara declared, as his pacifistas began to attack amidst the crowd, firing beams from their mouths, and the agents continued to kill other pirates using the 6 styles. "This is going to be a massacre," Yuta murmured next to Luffy, still standing as a couple of love-struck teenagers. Luffy just watched until Sentomara delivered an axe blow to the head of the fake Straw Hat, knocking him out. "You really are an idiotic trash," Sentomara murmured, as everyone around was shocked and frustrated to realize they had been deceived. "He was just a fraud, we were deceived. Now we're screwed," the pirates exclaimed, frustrated watching the man who they thought would challenge the world government, knocked out. "Eliminate all the pirates," Sentomara ordered, and the pacifista began searching for everyone, until it found someone sitting at a distance. "Demolo Black, 26 million berries," the pacifista started with that fake Straw Hat. "Just 26 million? People fought frustrated. Caribou, 210 million berries." The pacifistas began scanning the entire area to name the captains. He continued naming various captains, until scanning the distance, looking at a couple, and started with the man. "Straw Hat detected. Bounty of 3,500,000,000 berries, the pacifista spoke, while everyone looked at that moment, including Sentomaru, who looked shocked at what he heard. What did you say? Repeat, PX12. Sentomaru exclaimed with some fear in his voice as everyone there paid attention to him. Straw Hat detected. Bounty of 3,500,000,000 berries. PX12 repeated. Where is he? Sentomaru murmured, while the pacifista simply opened his hand and fired a beam, which advanced through the crowd. Everyone watched the beam cut through the air until, at a distance, it approached two people. Before hitting them, one of them simply slapped the beam, causing it to fly up and explode near the giant trees. You should be careful with those pacifistas, Sentomaru. Aren't you seeing that I'm in the middle of a date with my wife? Luffy's voice was heard as the whole place fell silent. It can't be. Sentomaru murmured with a trembling voice. Well, it looks like I'm going to have to act. Luffy said as he stretched, looking at his wife. I'll be right back. He said and disappeared. Well, it looks like this guy was pretending to be me, Luffy spoke calmly, appearing behind Sentomaru and the pacifistas without anyone being able to perceive or follow his speed. Luffy looked at the fake straw hat with interest, as everyone around kept their eyes fixed on him, holding their breath. A real emperor. They murmured, trembling in the presence of Luffy, who had a very different atmosphere from the one who was pretending to be him. I can't even breathe or move, so this is what it's like to see someone who was at the top of this world in strength. The pirates continued to comment among themselves, while the sailors sweated, believing they would die there. Even the agents, previously confident, took a step back, knowing that if they were dealing with the real Straw Hat, death was certain for everyone there. It's good to see you back, Sentomaru, but I'm going to take a few members here and then I'll take my leave, Luffy spoke calmly and even politely in a playful tone. Sentomaru was very scared now, and before he could react, a burst of haki erupted from Luffy. Immediately, the entire place was enveloped, expanding across the island, while Yuta's twin capes at a distance immediately flew backwards with the force of the haki sweeping through every corner. At Shaki's bar, everyone immediately felt the haki and raised their heads in the direction it came from, wondering what Luffy was doing. The entire island began to be enveloped by his haki, and in the next moment, everyone at that place began to fall, whether pirates with bounties of hundreds of thousands, government agents, or even Sentomaru in the navy. No one resisted his haki and fell to the ground in the next moment. Luffy saw the sound of bodies falling everywhere, but two beings were still standing in front of Luffy. Being machines, the pacifistas were not affected by the haki, which only affects living beings in their souls. Luffy looked at the pacifistas as they opened their mouths to attack him. But, in the next moment, their bodies were crushed with someone appearing on top of them and punching them with both arms wrapped in haki. Yuta landed as they exploded, approaching Luffy. She had defeated two pacifistas with one blow. I thought you didn't want to draw attention, but I was wrong, she murmured. Well, I had no choice. After all, someone interesting is coming this way, Luffy murmured, having already sensed the presence of this being even before releasing his haki. He simply used his strength to draw her here, and that's exactly what happened. Something fell from the sky like a meteor near them, making Yuta look up, slightly scared, feeling that she could not defeat this person while her instincts told her to flee. Meanwhile, Luffy calmly looked at the debris and smoke being dispersed, revealing a beautiful blonde Tenryubito woman with 4 wings on her back. You? The woman spoke, looking at him angrily. I don't know who you are, but I didn't know the Tenryubitos could produce someone so beautiful, Luffy commented, looking at the beautiful woman who stared at him as if he were already dead. Chapter 374, Sabayati again 03. Third-person POV. Sabayati. Despite Luffy finding the woman in front of him pleasantly beautiful, his eyes soon turned serious, knowing he was dealing with someone quite powerful. Yuta, get out of here immediately, Luffy said, as the girl nodded, jumping back. However, the woman in front did not seem to let her go so easily and advanced the next moment, her wings flexing back, and she sped forward, creating a spear in her hands with a white light similar to Kong's, summoning her staff. But, as soon as she moved to stop Yuta, she was immediately halted by Luffy's sword, with an explosion cracking the ground the next moment. Luffy looked at her with a tone of disapproval. I thought you wanted to face me, not attack someone who has nothing to do with our fight. I want you to feel the same as we did when you dared to hurt one of us, inferior creature. You and all those related to you will die terrible deaths. Understand this from us, the true rulers of this world, she exclaimed, moving her spear back as she spun and again prepared to advance against Luffy, who immediately struck against her weapon and the whole space in the area exploded into cracks as both Luffy and this woman released the Conqueror's haki. Luffy was not surprised that she could possess this power. Both rays exploded the whole place, tossing the ground around them with bodies of pirates, sailors, and government agents unconscious to all sides to the distance. Yuta had to protect herself from debris flying everywhere. The woman moved away amidst the dust, while Luffy watched with observation haki, as she simply made the spear glow and transform into another weapon, sketching an arc, showing the next moment this weapon and beginning to pull the string with a white arrow materializing in the air to be launched at Luffy. Luffy saw this and smiled, adjusting his sword waiting for the attack. The arrow was fired the next moment and it met Ace before reaching Luffy, the metal against the arrow at high speed, flying to one side before exploding in a white flash. Other arrows quickly were fired. Luffy used just the sword, but it was enough to control and deflect the attacks as they fell to all sides. Each time an arrow hit somewhere, a huge explosion occurred while the entire space disintegrated, turning the hit area into a kind of ash. A bit different from Kizaru's ability, all matter turned to dust and more arrows continued as the woman with 4 wings moved her arm so fast it was no longer visible, launching consecutively, hundreds of flashes while Luffy began to defend rapidly, his arm also, while it was seen moving appearing just a blur, as both continued for the next seconds without anyone moving. The explosions were not limited to there, as some arrows flew to the sky, falling in various parts of the island. An entire building was hit near Sabayati Park. BOOMMM. What's going on? Run! Screams began to be heard throughout the island with citizens immediately running in this chaos. What's going on over there? Vivi murmured in the bar, hearing the explosions from afar, while everyone looked to that distance and also by the shock of 2 Conquerors' haki spreading across the island, recognizing Luffy's. Luffy is fighting against someone powerful, Usopp said, scanning with haki several kilometers ahead until he found Luffy very close, as he fought against a woman. Returning to the fight, Luffy immediately continued defending, and his sword began to summon a red lightning, releasing his Akuma no Mi power, charging as the woman continued launching divine arrows at him, but raising an eyebrow feeling the next second he attacked with his future sight. Luffy took advantage of a few milliseconds from one arrow to another to counterattack. He launched his sword with red electricity forward and the attack quickly ran up to the woman, while a scarlet explosion advanced against her. She immediately stopped attacking and prepared to defend, as the lightning covered her and quickly advanced several kilometers back, coming out one side of the island with a huge thunder, hitting against the sea and generating an explosion shaking the entire area. What's happening? People there exclaimed, feeling the island shake. She's really strong, she defended against all that attack so easily. Luffy couldn't help but murmur. You are doomed here, inferior being. I will judge all your crimes against the gods. The voice came out amid the smoke. You're being very aggressive when we still have some Tenryubito holding hostages. Luffy spoke. After all, there were supposed to be some Tenryubito with Enel. They are all dead, you liar, we saw all their deaths from the Vivre cards. She exclaimed with a tone of anger. Everyone dead, so Enel killed them. Well, that doesn't matter, but we have 2 hearts of those who fought at Marineford. Luffy spoke as Lamy had handed over the 2 hearts. I will reclaim them, the woman immediately growled, finally appearing as the smoke dissipated amid all the destruction left by Luffy's sword. She was enveloped in wings that quickly opened, revealing her final hybrid form, having the same shape as the woman, but with a different design. Her blonde hair was even longer, reaching her feet, and she wore a queen's tiara, holding a shield and a sword, and wore armor in a Greco-Roman style. Are you some kind of angel? To think I'd see such a fruit. Luffy murmured. Yes, I ate the Tenchi Tenchi no Mi, the mythical fruit of the angel warrior. And you, inferior being, dweller of the underworld, your existence dared to challenge the gods of this world. She growled with a firm tone and her voice sounded truly divine. Cutting out this talk of you being gods, it's kind of stupid, but your voice really is nice. Do you sing opera? Luffy asked. You really are some kind of monkey. I don't even know why I'm arguing with someone from this world. She growled. Let's fight and stop with this strange speech. Your form looks interesting, Let's see who's stronger, Luffy said, excited. He was basically just playing around until now with the woman and wanted to see the level of power of the Holy Knights at their peak. After all, he thought those he had faced were much weaker than this woman, even those who fought at Marineford were below the level of this woman. The next moment, the two disappeared and quickly her sword clashed against Luffy's ace. This immediately launched rays of the Conqueror to all sides, and the whole island trembled, feeling the power of both as it devastated the entire area. And it wasn't just the island, the sky received the blow of both with the Conqueror's haki and split the next moment, opening up over the whole island. And, just like the event that happened more than a year ago, a tree that indicated the district number was simply cut as both appeared next to it. They flew through space, hitting against each other at high speed. In the city, people were already scared by the tremors, but suddenly they heard explosions coming their way and barely had time to react or even see the two people fighting above them, only seeing the glows of the attacks and the wind they left behind, continuing to fly across the island, fighting against each other. Well, this is quite fun, Luffy spoke, while he seemed to fight with the same intensity as he did with Kizaru at this location, and he wasn't even using his fruits properly. At one point, the woman began to get frustrated, seeing her attacks being repelled, while she struggled to attack him. She immediately began to glow, moving away a bit from Luffy, as he watched her. The next moment, she began to divide into 3 more parts, creating clones. The white aura clones, identical to her, one using a spear, appeared beside her, and another using a bow appeared on the other side, while the one in the middle continued using sword and shield, being the original. If that's the case, Luffy smiled, then I'll transform into a black angel, he said, and immediately, huge black wings began to sprout from his back, larger than they used to be in Phase 1 more than a year ago, as they opened. It doesn't matter, I will kill her right here, the 3 said simultaneously with an arrogant tone, though a bit surprised by what they were seeing. Immediately, a battle began as the spear-wielding angel and the main angel with shield and sword advanced towards him. The archer angel began to attack from a distance, while Luffy immediately flapped his wings and advanced against his 3 opponents. Flashes of light began at this moment as Luffy used the Conqueror's haki, embedded in his weapon, fighting the two to try to even the odds. He parried the spear and dodged the sword, while counterattacking the main body. She put up the shield to defend with Luffy noticing that shield was quite powerful. He had to flap his black wings to disappear into the air as white light arrows flew towards him, but he managed to dodge by mere inches as she used future sight to follow him. The arrows hit the ground, causing it to explode and turn to ashes. And the battle had just begun. As Yuta quickly approached the location, watching Luffy fight, while Zoro reappeared along with Yamato, looking curiously at the fight happening among the tallest trees in the air. "Who is that fighting against Luffy?" asked Yamato. "From what Luffy said, she's a holy knight," Yuta replied. "Really?" Yamato murmured in surprise. "A holy knight? We haven't even entered the new world with me, and we've already found one here." Zoro responded. "This one is different from the others," Yamato murmured. Luffy was flirting with her, as always. Yuta crossed her arms with a dissatisfied tone. The fight continued while the woman grew increasingly frustrated with Luffy being able to keep up with her, and Luffy flashed a smile. Despite having to dodge several times, he was not touched once. Finding an opening, he quickly flapped his wings and advanced, grabbing the spear-wielding angel, knocking his weapon away while slashing him with that opening. He immediately shone and disappeared. The archer angel launched a series of arrows at Luffy, who quickly wrapped his sword with haki and electricity, striking against the attack that seemed to hold it for a moment, before wrapping it in red electricity and hurling it against the one who had generated it. The angel woman was surprised by this, as she saw another attack with the other arrows being accumulated on the sword and advancing towards the original soon after. The archer woman couldn't react as the attack exploded on her, as the arrow became even faster with Ace's electricity. However, the original raised her shield as the attack hit it. The shield did not explode as Luffy thought, it just glowed as strange symbols around the metal shone white. "You see? This shield can reflect everything," she said, as the shield fired the attack back at a surprised Luffy, who ended up receiving it without being able to react even with future sight. "It also doubles the attack. Have you fallen already?" The woman seemed to crack a victorious smile. "That's a nice move." Luffy appeared in the midst of the smoke, just spitting out a bit of blood before flashing a smile at the woman. If you weren't someone with such a sick god complex, I'd even ask you out, considering I hate Tenryubito and their ilk, Luffy said as the woman raised an eyebrow at him. Blasphemy, you think I would go out with an inferior being like you? She growled and prepared to attack him. Let's continue. Luffy spoke, maintaining his rogue smile. Chapter 375, Sabaody again 04. Third-person POV. Sabaody. The battle between the man and woman continued to spread throughout Sabaody. Even the other Straw Hats had to step out of the bar to see what was happening. It didn't take long for them to see Luffy running, flapping his wings through the forest, knocking down a tree here and there while many places exploded with clashing energies as he fought against the woman. At the same time he was launching lightning with his sword, the woman defended herself with a shield, reflecting and throwing back the attacks. The battle was between winged beings, and Luffy even looked like an angel while fighting the woman who was determined to destroy him. This perception was not limited to the Straw Hats. Others noticed it too, despite the sailors who were in reserve and at bases, monitoring the entire operation, were frightened by the fight on such a scale, yet unaware of who was involved. Commander Sentomaru. Commander Sentomaru. Commander Sentomaru. Calling his name several times, Kazara's nephew finally managed to move his still-closed eyes as he woke up in an area completely destroyed by Luffy's initial clash with the woman. What's happening? He murmured then, in the next moment, explosions came from the sky before another tree was cut down and an attack blew up an entire column, disintegrating it not far from where he was, staring with wide eyes. He quickly grabbed his special Den Mushi, making a high-level call to Mary Geos. Straw Hat is in Sabaody. The real one has appeared. He exclaimed. What? Tell me exactly what's happening, we're getting some reports from Sabaody. The voice, initially surprised, returned to a calm tone asking about the situation and he began to recount everything that happened. I see, let's see what we can do, a voice from one of the four elders responded from the other side. Then he just hung up the Den Mushi and continued to observe all the chaos being created, merely watching the ongoing battle as a spectator. So he's back. One of the elders said in a somber tone. After we thought we were just dealing with an imposter, the real one appeared. Another spoke in a somber tone. But, we still don't have the project ready, it's so close and now we have a chance. The third elder spoke in a frustrated tone. Yes, in the end, it's not worth it, it's still risky to send forces. The fourth spoke. We should send Venus again to come back and not prolong this fight, after all, Sabaody is an important place. Another spoke. Call her, we can't destroy Straw Hat here, but soon, when Dr. Vegapunk finishes creating the mechanism here in Mary Geos, we will attack and even use Uranos, if Sama wishes. He concluded the discussion. Meanwhile, the fight continued with the two battling across the island while flying through the sky, her shield managing to reflect all of Luffy's attacks while he tried to create an opening against the woman, but she was extremely fast, strong, and skilled, giving some trouble to the Straw Hat at level 1 of his mystical Akuma no Mi, as he hadn't used his flames yet. But this was not only difficult for him, as the woman also struggled while she tried to catch him or even hit him with reflected attacks, but Luffy was very good at dodging with future sight. The Holy Knight, tired of having difficulty dealing with this inferior being, had stopped in front of Luffy at a distance, as she began to unleash her full power, while her sword and shield disappeared in white light and a large sword was formed at that moment, as she lifted it and her 4 wings turned into 6. Hey, she wants to attack with full power? Luffy looked curiously and surprised at that, the woman really was going all out. She intends to wipe out Luffy along with the entire island? Yamato commented in a surprised tone. This is bad, the captain better handle this. Zoro commented nearby. There's only one way for him to deal with this, and it's... Yamato murmured before widening his eyes. He's going to use that? I don't want to be anywhere near that. Yuta exclaimed in a slightly scared tone as she immediately moved away. Even Yamato and Zoro grimaced at that. Meanwhile, Luffy watched the woman beginning to glow as she started to accumulate energy in her sword. If that's the case, I'll try not to destroy this island. He murmured as he moved his sword to the side and began to concentrate. Energy began to accumulate as Luffy released yellow lightning with his Conqueror's Haki, but they started to change as the lightning began to turn redder, eventually becoming completely bright crimson, and everything around him began to distort as Luffy unleashed his most powerful Haki. This power was risky, but it was the only way to face her and her attack. Purple flames began to appear soon after, burning much more intensely than over a year ago, as they seemed to even disintegrate the matter in the air. On one side, divine light, and on the other, the flames of chaos, two mythical elements that quickly prepared to face each other. The space above the island began to change, and a storm started to form, as if the end of the world was beginning there. This caused all the inhabitants of the island to feel a bad omen, while the whole place began to tremble. The woman looked at Luffy with determination. "I will eliminate you," she murmured, as her energy began to finish accumulating for the attack. Luffy did the same, releasing his red Conqueror's Haki with his powers of his mythical beast for the first time since training. They were moments away from finally facing each other. However, a Den Den Mushi in the woman's armor rang at this moment, and she didn't even need to answer to hear it. After all, the person on the other side was at the top of the hierarchy. "Stop this immediately." The voice was none other than one of the four elders. Although surprised, she quickly nodded. Even though she was frustrated at the moment, she had no choice but to obey. Her light began to diminish, and Luffy raised an eyebrow while also decreasing his powers, prepared to launch the attack and sighed in relief. After all, he did not want to lose control in this state and destroy the island as well. The woman clicked her tongue while both were again in their intense battle forms, before she looked at Luffy with a serious tone. "You may leave here alive this time, inferior, but you won't be so lucky next time," she said, conveying her anger and frustration. "What a pity, maybe next time I'll invite you on a date," Luffy teased her. The woman, emanating even more anger, just shook her head as she flexed her wings, returning to her hybrid form, shooting up into the sky at high speed, returning to Mary Geo's. "It's a pity, I didn't even get her number," Luffy murmured, still making fun. But despite his teasing, he genuinely recognized her as a powerful force. "She is the strongest member I have faced from the world government. She could even compare to Yamato after training or even be stronger, showing that, even among the Holy Knights, there was an even higher hierarchy. Such power further strengthened the government when they needed to use them." Luffy thought as he still hovered in the air with his wings. Luffy knew that the world government used three ways to intimidate their enemies: public execution, impel down, and the bridge of forced labor, Tequila Wolf. But the latter was made chaotic by his father, Sabo, and the other revolutionaries releasing the prisoners that the world government had placed there, even being whole kingdoms that don't pay taxes to the Tenryubido. Thinking of this, Luffy couldn't help but remember his brother, Sabo. A year ago, after Sabo met Ace on Whitebird's ship, Ace made a call, while Luffy and Lucy finally spoke with their brother after so many years, promising to meet as soon as possible after Luffy reached the New World. Dismissing these temporary thoughts, Luffy just sighed as the Holy Knight had already left, and his companions were nearby. Even Yuta, who had run away, came back, seeing that everything was now fine. He flapped his wings and returned to the ground, before they disappeared. As Luffy opened a smile to the three there. "I hope you haven't gotten too rusty just training for a year, Captain," Zoro approached with a joking tone. Luffy shrugged. "You underestimate me, my swordsman. You see, it's not every day we get to fight an angel," he replied before widening his smile even more. "Anyway, let's head back to the others," Luffy said. They began to return to the bar. Upon meeting the rest of the crew, Luffy was immediately bombarded with questions about what had happened, but Luffy just shrugged. "I faced someone who got in the way of my recruitment," he explained, without much detail. "Speaking of which," he continued, "I couldn't help thinking about the groups I left behind to fight the woman. We need to deal with them now. They're probably trying to flee the island. I want you guys to capture them for me," Luffy requested, showing some wanted posters of his targets. The fake Straw Hat was running along with other members of his crew towards the coast. They had suddenly woken up and found themselves many meters from where they should have been before Luffy's Haki knocked them down. They quickly woke those who were still sleeping and ran to save themselves. "We have to get out of here immediately. We can no longer use these clothes or we'll be killed," the fake Luffy spoke as he ran as fast as his fat body could manage. "Captain, this was a terrible idea," the man dressed as Zoro murmured as they continued running. "I know, it's pretty obvious, but now we have no choice." "Let's run," the fake Luffy replied. "I don't want to stay here anymore," the fake Nami exclaimed. "Quick," the fake Robin said alongside, who was actually a man dressed as a woman. They finally reached the coast, where there was a ship with a crookedly drawn straw hat flag. As they approached to set sail, hoping to never appear here again, an explosive sound occurred and the ship suddenly began to lift, immediately frightening them. "What is that?" they exclaimed. But Beepo appeared on deck and, before they could react, he began to attack each of them, disappearing and reappearing in front of the first. "Oh! Oh! Oh! Oh!" Beepo shouted with each kung fu blow, until he dealt with the last of the imposters falling to the ground unconscious and looked with a funny glance at them, especially at the fake Luffy. "So similar to the captain," he murmured. Sometime later, the fat man didn't even know how he was hit, but when he woke up, he found himself tied up in an unknown place. "What's happening?" he said, before looking ahead and seeing Luffy watching him with crossed arms and a not-so-pleasant smile for him. He immediately became speechless, while sweat dripped from his face. "Captain, we're dead." "I knew it was a terrible idea," the fake Enel said. Luffy waited for everyone to wake up while all returned their frightened eyes to him. "What should I do with you, huh?" Luffy spoke, looking at them with interest, while they continued to stare at him in fear. They couldn't even speak, paralyzed by fear. Luffy sighed. "Well, if you're wondering if you're going to die, and the answer is no, I'm not going to kill you," he said before flashing an even wider smile. "However, I liked your creativity. You're going to join my fleet and go through hell, until you're strong enough, or at least die trying," Luffy declared. The imposters didn't even know how to respond to that. "Now, I can't let you use my name, so I will name you myself. From now on, you'll be known as the Two-Piece Crew," Luffy declared, remembering a YouTube video that made him laugh in his past life. Chapter 376, Sabaody Again 05. Third-person POV. Sabaody. Luffy looked at a group of pirates in front of him, including at least 4 pirate crews, among them Two-Piece, Caribou and his brother, plus 2 other unknown groups that caught Luffy's interest. "Since you wanted to sail under my flag, I'll grant your wish," Luffy said calmly, looking at the crowd staring back at him with fear and anger towards the fake Straw Hat crew, who had deceived them. "I know you're angry with him, but don't kill them. After all, they'll be under training from now on." Luffy continued as the fake Straw Hats, or now, the Two-Piece, frowned, unsure how to respond, their lives being decided by these people. Luffy then went on, "Anyway, let's begin," he said, looking at each of his captains. The 2 unknowns seemed to look at him with admiration, but they still didn't fully trust Caribou and his crew, who was as treacherous as Caesar, so it was a good way to keep him under control. Luffy spoke to his companion standing next to him while the woman looked at him. "Take their hearts out," Luffy pointed at the brothers. As soon as he requested, the woman raised her hands and before they could react, she simply created her room and removed their hearts the next moment. Both brothers were stunned, feeling a sharp pain as something hit their chests. "What is this?" Caribou exclaimed, scared upon seeing their hearts there, frozen in front of him, not understanding how his mud body had been attacked in such a way. "We have your 2 hearts now. You are not trustworthy after all. I can feel the malice bursting from both of you, so while you are in the crew, any act of betrayal will be the death of you, got it?" Luffy spoke firmly, not caring about taking the freedom of treacherous people as long as they were with him. "But, Lord Luffy," Caribou's brother begged. "Stop crying and just make sure not to try to deceive us, otherwise, these hearts won't end up well," Luffy threatened, leaving everyone there shivering. "Yonkers are so brutal. We really can't slip up. Our lives depend on our performance." The lower-ranked pirates began to murmur, swallowing dryly. And Luffy stopped his menacing face to break into a smile. "Now let's begin. We're going to the New World and I want you to have been here for a month. But your mission is very simple. I scoured the island and found some mermaids and even mermen still being traded, trapped in auction houses. You don't know, but I declared Fishman Island as my territory since Whitebeard died," he declared. "Fishman Island is Lord Luffy's territory. They murmured in surprise, not knowing this information. Yes, it is, so you know what you have to do. After all, there's no forgiveness for those who try to challenge me. Joker is a dead name in the underworld and his family has been trying to maintain their businesses over the last year. However, their live merchandise are my people. That's why I want the blood of those who dare challenge me, Luffy said with a firm tone. Nay. These damn. Hachi murmured. Tisk, Jinbei looked serious. Shirahoshi had a determined look. All three main crew members from Fishman Island quickly had only one thought: to destroy those who dare harm the island. The pirates heard this and began to nod in agreement. They dared to attack the captain's people? Exactly. We must destroy them. We must take down all the slave traders. The pirates, initially afraid, now engaged with Luffy's words as well, growing angry knowing they were now part of this crew, and quickly began to gather inspiration along with anger towards those harming the group they now belonged to. Let's defeat them. Captain, give us the order and we'll destroy all the auction houses on the island. Yes, let's go as soon as you command. Luffy looked at the entire crowd shouting at the same time and liked what he was seeing. Well, that's what I wanted to see, he murmured satisfied and continued speaking. Listen up everyone. I want to clean up this island, so follow my order. Exterminate all those auction houses and save the slaves. From today all the business on this island belongs to my organization and there will be no more slave trading here. Luffy exclaimed, as everyone raised their weapons. Yeah, let's follow the captain's order, the pirates shouted. Despite Caribou and his brother not being as enthusiastic as everyone around them or even their crew that joined the others, they no longer had their hearts, so they had no choice, as their fates were now tied to the Straw Hat crew, starting to bitterly regret getting involved in this in the first place. Meanwhile, at a remote location, a fishman was chained next to a tank, with a mermaid inside it, both wearing explosive collars. They had been captured by pirates who secretly invaded Fishman Island. Even though it was declared as belonging to the Straw Hat, they did not seem to fear due to his disappearance a year ago, so they took advantage of that time to catch mermaids and mermen after the fall of Whitebeard. But what they were not aware of was that the near destruction of the island a few hours ago was due to Luffy's own fight. A guard was walking past the cells where the prisoners were. Are we safe? The whole island was trembling before. What happened? These questions echoed through that auction house and all the places, while everyone just remembered looking powerless with that chaos happening. And as soon as those guards passed the cells, an explosion destroyed a wall, causing dust and debris to rise in front of them. What is this? Guards! Guards! The manager started to scream, seeing this at the end of the corridor, calling the guards, while the slaves looked surprised and saw several guards beginning to run through the corridor to point their guns at the smoke. So this is the auction. A ruffian's voice came from behind the smoke. Ha ha ha. So they're the ones who will die? A person then emerged, being a pirate with a pistol and a sword, but no one recognized. Who dares attack the underworld auction, which belonged to the former Joker? Don't you know what this means? Which group commands this place now? The manager exclaimed angrily. After all, it was no secret that Kaido was now the name behind the extension of the old Doflamingo family in Dressrosa, who were still trying to maintain as many businesses as possible, putting Kaido's name to keep dominating the underworld. Who cares about Kaido? The same pirate scoffed, and before they could react, he raised his pistol and fired, the bullet quickly knocking down one of the guards as he fell to the ground gushing blood. Let's go, men! Kill all these bastards and free the slaves, as the captain asked. The pirate exclaimed. We're under attack. Who dares do this? The auction men began to exclaim, returning the shots and also shooting at the debris, while more and more pirates began to emerge from there. You bastards! You dare capture members from the territory of the Straw Hat? Suffer the consequences. Another group emerged in another auction nearby, as they invaded the place, killing the auction members. What should we do? One of the fake Straw Hat pirates asked, looking at all the other pirates advancing and fighting. We have no choice, let's go, or we'll be killed, the fake Straw Hat murmured. He was still trying to absorb everything that was happening and wondering how his name was now two-piece, but with no choice, he moved forward with his pistol, while his body ran as fast as it could, despite the size of his fat. Meanwhile, the place was all enveloped in chaos, with the auction men still trying to sustain the fear of the enemy because of their patrons, but they were quickly brought down to the ground by the number of pirates emerging and attacking them mercilessly, not caring about the name Kaido. After all, they also followed a Yonko now. Stop this. A celestial dragon is coming here to buy a mermaid. You dare. A manager tried his last card to stop the bloodshed but didn't even finish before he was killed. It doesn't matter. Those who dare mess with the captain's people must suffer the consequences, the pirate said. Elsewhere, a mermaid was being carried off a pirate ship that had just arrived from Fishman Island, docking in a forest to take her to a nearby auction. Look what we've caught. This will make us rich, one of the pirates said excitedly. Please, release me, please. The mermaid murmured frightened, struggling as the men continued to carry her with ease, laughing at her misfortune. And before anyone could react, he had fallen to the ground with a shot to the face. Hey, we're being attacked, another pirate shouted, as another shot seemed to have been fired silently, as another pirate fell to the ground dead while blood splattered from his head. The mermaid fell when the third pirate was killed, dropping her. She was stunned, surrounded by bodies. As the pirates from the boat began to search for the shooter but found no one yet. Who is shooting? See where the bullets are coming from. The captain was shouting, as they searched, but only saw the empty forest, not knowing where the shots were coming from. Another pirate fell beside him, and before turning to the right, another 3 fell to the left as they became scared and began to run, dying one by one until only the mermaid remained. Meanwhile, at a distant location, someone was reloading their rifle, aiming through their scope from a distance of 10 kilometers where they were killing those pirates. He was lying on the lawn in front of Shikuyaku's bar, along with some crew members, as he continued killing pirates even from that distance. One group down, let's see another. Usopp said as he prepared to take down another pirate group involved with slaves. Meanwhile, another ship was leaving from another part of the island, carrying 3 tied-up Tritons, who cried as they looked with hatred at the human pirates. Finally, we'll get to Sabaody and make some money, they exclaimed excitedly. However, a shadow appeared in the sky at that moment, and everyone looked up. Wait, is that a mermaid? They murmured stunned. When Shirahoshi finally appeared. She moved her trident to the side and launched it forward, as a gust of wind surged straight towards the ship. Before they could react, the entire ship exploded, shattering quickly. The sea below them swirled into a whirlpool, sucking them down, while Shirahoshi moved her trident again, as if commanding the sea. She then pulled the tritons from that whirlpool, while the maelstrom continued to suck everything, making all the pirates disappear as they screamed in despair, disappearing from this world as their bodies went straight to the bottom of the sea with the power of the Leviathan. You're the mermaid princess, the tritons exclaimed in awe as soon as they saw Shirahoshi. You're going home. We'll take care of the rest, understood? Shirahoshi warned with a firm tone, and the tritons nodded, returning to the sea. Several other pirate ships with tritons and mermaids captured from Fishman Island were heading to the surface while still moving upwards from the bottom of the sea. They didn't see the shadows approaching them while Jinbei and Hachi appeared and quickly attacked them, destroying all the ships and freeing all the tritons. The entire island was in chaos at this moment, while Luffy, main members, and new fleet members acted, also destroying entire auctions and massacring those who dared touch his people, just because he had been absent for a year. Chapter 377, Sabaody Again 06. Third-person POV. Sabaody. Massacre at the auction houses in Sabaody. The return of the Straw Hats marked with blood and death. This was the front page of the newspaper the other day, as it began reporting on the massacre conducted by the group at the auction houses across the island, with at least hundreds of people slaughtered, if not thousands. The return of the Straw Hat not only limited itself to attacking the auction houses, but he also gave an interview. The newspaper continued as Luffy appeared with several reporters below him taking pictures with connected Den Den mushies to record him, while Luffy stood there, arms crossed and looking seriously at the cameras. Luffy declared this to the entire world, representing his return to the sea again. Fishman Island is my territory, anyone who invaded the island knowing that this people was protected by me, because Jinbei had announced it, paid with their lives. I'm taking all the records of smuggling that happened in these months. From now on, I will hunt them down, one by one, no matter where they are in this world, because you messed with my people and now you have paid with your lives. His statement in the newspaper quickly stirred up the sea, declaring war and a massacre to all those pirates who invaded the island and those who bought from them. People were already fearing the unexpected return of Monkey D. Luffy. Now those who were involved in the trafficking of fishmen and mermaids were at this moment terrified, calling the Navy and even the government asking for help and protection. "You certainly know how to surprise with that interview you gave yesterday," Robin commented with a smile while Luffy looked at the newspaper beside him. "Well, what else did they expect by taking my people like that? It's time for people to fear my name. Just because I was training for a year doesn't mean I will let them go unpunished. It's time for them to regret their sins against my people," Luffy said. "Would you forgive them?" Robin asked, raising an eyebrow. "No." Luffy shrugged. Obviously he wouldn't forgive them after going against those under his flag. "Captain, everything is ready for us to head to the New World." Beepo approached at that moment, as Frankie came with Rayleigh. After him they put a coating on the Black Pearl to return to the sea. Frankie ended up learning from Rayleigh in Skypiea, so it was very quick for them to do it, besides waiting 3 days, since Frankie installed some devices on the ship that can do this and expedite the coating process. Now everyone was ready to depart. Then, Luffy stood up from his chair next to the bar, with Robin at his side and picked up his Den Den mushi. "Everyone come here in front of the bar." "We are leaving soon," Luffy said on the phone. While only they were in that area, they began to head to the meeting point. The crew gathered along with some new members of the fleet, while a new crowd formed in front of them. "We are leaving soon and will organize the mess that happened on Fishman Island. Meanwhile, I want you all to stay on this island for the next month, dominate all the black market trade and control everything that goes through here. I don't want to see any more illegal trade on this island. My other organization will go after the culprits and clients who kidnapped and bought the mermaids and fishmen in the last 6 months," Luffy ordered everyone, who quickly nodded. "Yes, Captain. We will do a job you will be proud of," everyone immediately exclaimed. Luffy knew that preventing any kidnapping from Fishman Island would be very difficult. Even Whitebeard couldn't prevent it. But Luffy would do something no one had ever done before. He would go after the people who bought the merchandise in the last 6 months. After all, the island was now his responsibility after the death of Whitebeard, and he would show the world that he would set an example for those who messed with his territory. Therefore, on the last day, he stayed with Nojiko and Robin, researching all the trade done in the last 6 months, looking for names of people, famous families, and rich pirates who had bought fishmen and mermaids. There were many celestial dragons who had bought as well, but Luffy would have his revenge one day. Despite not being able to act immediately against Mary Geos, but he would not allow any more mermaids or fishmen to be kidnapped. He wanted everyone to know that he was coming after them and put his Baroque works to do all the work. In the end, things were already set in Sabaody, as he had planned. It was time to finally start the journey to the New World with his main crew. The pirates would stay in Sabaody for a month, and as soon as they were summoned for war, they would come to the New World. Luffy had spoken with Baroque Works to come here to start controlling all the trade and information of this island, but being careful with the government being so close. "Yes, Captain, we will bring pride to your flag," the crowd continued exclaiming. "Now, we are departing. We will see you soon. I hope you are strong for the challenges," Luffy said, as he looked at his crew. "Let's go," he exclaimed and quickly boarded the ship along with the ship, as the Black Pearl began to rise with the power of Beepo and all the Straw Hats began to move towards it as well. But it was not the only crew. After all, Nami jumped with a group of individuals, being the fake Straw Hats themselves, since they would be killed if they were left with the other pirates. The ship flew on, while Luffy kept the ship of the fake Straw Hats minimized in his pocket. The entire crowd exclaimed as the ship began to fly away, heading towards the sea. "It looks like they have finally departed," Rayleigh murmured beside his wife. "I can't wait to hear from them. What will they get up to in the New World?" "It's going to be quite fun," she said with a small smile. "Things have become interesting from now on," Rayleigh also commented, opening a smile. In the end, the Black Pearl continued advancing until the ship finally left the island and turned directly down into the sea, crashing against the water and quickly having a view of the sea bottom as it began to descend straight down. "Well, now we don't need to go all the way again, right? Let's take a shortcut. What do you say, Shira?" Luffy called to his wife, while Shirahoshi quickly flapped her tails coming out from the side of Little Megalo and went to the front of the ship, moving her trident forward. She began to command the sea with her power, while the water stirred as if it created a space within it, pushing away all the water molecules and creating a water tube inside the sea like a direct whirlpool to the sea, different from what she had used against those pirates who had captured the fishmen from her island. This time, it was smoother, while the ship seemed to stabilize on top of it, quickly advancing downward at high speed to the bottom of the sea. "This is so much fun!" Lucy exclaimed, approaching the bow of the ship, stretching her hand and looking amused forward. "Like it happened on Reverse Mountain when there were much fewer of us, now we are heading for the next adventure, the New World," Luffy exclaimed while also looking at the high speed of the ship. But unlike Reverse Mountain, where the members were Luffy, Yamato, Zoro, Kuina, Shirahoshi, Megalo, Usopp, Lamy, Reiju, Nami, Nojiko, Alvida, Hachi, Chachu, Bippo, Hugo. Now the ship was filled with new members: Chopper, Vivi, Robin, Baby 5, Enel, Jimbei, Lucy, Domino, Monet, Perona, Rebecca, Bonnie, Frank, Brook, Yuta, Karu, and Laboon, doubling the initial number. Additionally, the ship was also filled with Kairos and the members of 2Ps. "So this is the bottom of the sea? So beautiful," Rebecca murmured excitedly next to her father. Domino also looked through her glasses with some admiration, despite keeping a serious face. "This is too fast." Perona was complaining about the speed of the ship, while Monet tried not to show fear, but she was also a bit scared as they descended so rapidly. "It's really beautiful," Bonnie murmured, crossing her arms and looking at the sea. "Super speed." Frankie was enjoying the speed of the ship. "It's so fast that my soul is leaving my body. Yah-ho-ho-ho." Brook began to laugh, but quickly felt his soul actually leaving his body. He exclaimed in his ghostly state. "Ah! A ghost!" Perona exclaimed in fear as she flew to the back of the ship. "Why is she afraid of ghosts?" Bonnie murmured, not understanding what was happening. Jimbei was just at the helm steering the ship at high speed. Hachi by his side was calm, before returning to the crew. "I'm going to make something for us to eat," he said, thinking about his favorite food. "I'll also go to the kitchen," Reiju murmured as she followed the fishman. Foo. So fun," Robin commented. "Well, it looks like everyone's comfortable," Luffy murmured, watching the group interacting while he was at the bow of the ship. "Look, Luffy! A sea monster!" Lucy exclaimed, seeing the giant shadow pass by them. "Yes," Luffy murmured, turning his attention forward. The stronger part of the crew was just enjoying the show in front of them, smiling in anticipation of new adventures as the ship quickly descended deeper. However, the same could not be said for those who were desperate, screaming behind the ship. Sorry. No, I don't want to die like this," the 2-piece exclaimed, trying to deal with the fear of seeing the ship advancing so fast to the bottom of the sea. The Black Pearl continued descending until it finally disappeared completely, heading to the deepest part of the ocean. As the ship continued its journey, a meeting was taking place in Mary Geo's. After seeing the newspaper, a hand slammed down on the front page on the table. "We wanted to spare Sabaody from being destroyed in a fight, but it seems the Straw Hats still made a mess of it," one of the elders exclaimed. "We can't do anything yet, even if we wanted to," another elder replied. "After all, if we attack them, they could launch meteors at us. We would have to divide our forces, it would be total chaos. We should wait a bit. As soon as Dr. Vegapunk's project is ready, we won't have to worry about a meteor shower falling on Mary Geo's," he clarified. "You know, the longer he is at sea, the more he will grow, and the wilder the sea will become with this man doing whatever he wants, the less control the government will have with each day he stays alive. We should resolve this as soon as possible," the third elder spoke. Yes, even Venus reported on his strength, and even she had trouble facing him. Being one of the strongest of the sacred knights, this just shows how much more powerful he has become, but we don't know if he can reach that form that attacked Saturn. The fourth elder concluded. "We should test him to find out exactly who we are dealing with." The first elder returned. Are you thinking? Yes, let's put them against a huge force as soon as they arrive in the New World. We need to know the strength of this individual. Alright, that project is ready, let's put it to work. It will also be good to see his strength at this moment. They concluded, hoping to study the person most hated by the world government. Chapter 378, Fishman Island Again 01. Third person POV. Fishman Island. Fishman Island quickly appeared ahead of the Black Pearl as they approached it again. As always, the island's glow stood out from the ocean floor as the ship finally emerged from the vortex created by Shirahoshi, highlighting the beauty of the kingdom beneath the sea. How beautiful! Rebecca couldn't help but admire as she saw the island for the first time, and others shared this view. Mermaid! I want to see mermaids! Brooke started to exclaim. We've finally arrived, Luffy murmured as the ship slowly approached. His gaze fell to a dark side of the sea. His sister, next to him, noticed. What are you looking at, Luffy? She asked curiously. Don't you feel it yet? Luffy said, as his voice calmly directed toward that side. Are you there? Come here, he said calmly. Him? Lucy managed to see with her observation haki as a huge shadow began to emerge from that side at this moment. That? Zoro murmured, recognizing the shadow that was approaching with several tentacles. Luffy broke into a smile. Yes, it's my last companion I made on this island, whom I left here a year ago, as I couldn't bring him to Skypiea due to his size. Sarum heard Luffy's call through the voice of all things and immediately approached as soon as he felt it. He smiled as he came closer to the ship. Sarum, how are you? Luffy greeted him, while other small octopuses were beside him. I see that your siblings are doing great. He looked with interest at the small creatures. Luffy knew that Hody Jones had taken the young Kraken and blackmailed him by threatening his little siblings to make him obey their plans, so he asked some of his agents to go after the siblings in a very distant place in one of the blues, to be taken to the brother and that they could be raised by his side around the kingdom of fishmen. Sarum also helped in the protection of the island, along with others. After the death of Whitebeard, Luffy sent Jinbei several times to take care of the island's security and try to reinforce it. Many fishmen had been sent to Skypiea with the help of Bepo and had undergone intense training with Six Styles, but they had to return months before they departed. After all, the situation was a bit tense. Moreover, after Hody Jones and his main members were publicly executed, some others had to go for forced labor at the bottom of the sea searching for miners. One of these people was Watatsumi himself, who made an agreement with Neptune to use his punishment to take care of the borders of this country. Still, even though the island's defenses were better than in the time of Whitebeard, there was still work to be resolved. Luffy knew he needed to deal with this mess now that he was back. His first step was on the surface. With the destruction of the auction houses and his declaration of war against all those who had traded in Sabaody, they would hunt them across the world. Now here he was, who opted to navigate through the passage under the sea to the New World, instead of going directly over the Red Mountain. He also needed to see how things were with his father-in-law. After greeting his crew, Sarum along with his siblings, who were small folks by his side, Black Pearl advanced towards the island's port. At the port, Watatsumi was in the water as they approached and a large group of soldiers and a crowd were already waiting, recognizing the ship's flag. The ship finally docked and everyone shouted as Neptune waited with his sons on the side in front of everyone. Daddy! Shirahoshi immediately got off the ship to greet her father. My sweet daughter! You look so small, you look more beautiful when you're bigger. She complained, despite crying with the return of her daughter. But my husband prefers it this way. Shirahoshi spoke with a calm smile as she hugged her father. Your husband. Neptune grumbled, as Luffy was a thorn in his side, for having stolen his precious daughter from him and turned her into a pirate. And, speaking of him, Luffy landed on the land at that moment. Hello, father-in-law, how are things? I hope well. Luffy spoke with a smile. Neptune snorted but quickly returned to his serious demeanor. Welcome back to Fishman Island, Monkey D. Luffy. I'm sure you want to know everything that has happened here in recent months. Your help has managed to calm things down, although we still have many pirate attacks. He spoke. Please, I need to know exactly what happened these months, in detail, and I want to reinforce the security of this island before we definitively head to the New World. You must already know what we did on the surface before coming here, right? Luffy responded and asked. Yes, we received news. Several fishmen and mermaids who returned from Sabaody, being saved by you, they told us what happened there. We are thankful for that, Neptune spoke with a tone of respect and gratitude. Neptune then continued, announcing to all the Straw Hats who were still disembarking from the ship and approaching them. Anyway, let's go to the palace. We'll have a feast. There is also someone on this island who has been waiting for more than a month, said Neptune. As Luffy raised an eyebrow, scanning the island, he found him at the Ryugu Palace, surprised to see that person there, or part of him. The people seemed quite excited about the presence of the Straw Hats as they had given hope in protecting the island again, especially after knowing that numerous mermaids and fishmen had already been rescued by them on the surface and returned with the stories. Let's first go to the palace, then we'll stay a few days here and you can enjoy the island, especially those who weren't here before. Luffy spoke while everyone nodded and floating boats were brought for them to head towards the palace. It's good to see you again, Megalo. Shirahoshi's brothers greeted their sister's friend, as everyone proceeded to the palace. In the end, there was a great feast while the crew was inside the palace. Shirahoshi was with her family, and the other members had fun all around as usual. Luffy was eating with his sister and talking with the members when he was called by one of Neptune's ministers. Lord Luffy. Our guest would like to know if you can see him. He spoke as Luffy, eating a piece of meat, set it aside and nodded. Let's see him. Luffy said as he stood up and left the crew and the banquet hall behind. He is behind this room. The minister said as he stopped in front of the door. Luffy nodded and entered another separate audience room and found a man standing looking at the aquariums around the room. It's been a long time since I've seen you, Luffy greeted one of the old members of Whitebeard's crew. It's good to see you again, Monkey D. Luffy. The man murmured. Luffy looked at the one-armed man in front of him, probably lost in the fight against Teach and his crew, while defending Whitebeard's territories. Whitebeard fell an ace and the others were in a very bad situation since then. Luffy couldn't help wondering if things would be different with him there, but soon shook his head, thinking about what ifs as a defeat. Things happened as they should. And Luffy couldn't be the nanny of this group, they were allies, but he and his crew had their own adventure. After all, they had to have that isolated training to be prepared for all the challenges that would fall on the group from now on. He cared about his brother and no matter how many executions I have to invade, I would do everything to bring him back, but Ace also had his own crew and couldn't be his nanny. How is Ace? Luffy couldn't help asking looking at Vista. He's fine, along with the other members, the man replied, with a sad smile. They are in what remains of Daddy's territories, protecting them. Big Mom and Kaido are quite aggressive, but Teach really is quite insistent, isn't he? Luffy asked. Vista clenched his teeth at that moment. Yes, that damn, somehow, he got Dad's powers. He said with a dark tone. I see. Luffy murmured to the man, understanding Vista's anger. Luffy didn't show it, but he was also eager to face Teach, the man who probably possesses the Kraken fruit. Unlike Sarum, this one must be much more powerful, and now has two unique powers, Darkness and Earthquake. Ifrit of Chaos with the Moa Moa no Mi versus the Kraken with these powers. Who will be victorious in the end? Luffy murmured internally. He couldn't help but be excited about the final fight between these two mystical beasts. Who would win would be an answer to the chaotic future he would create. Luffy set his thoughts aside and turned back to Vista. I know why you're here, but you know that I'm also at war with two other Yonko at this moment, right? He began. I'm already preparing to face them, strengthening all my territories. I'll be invading Wano in a war against Kaido and Big Mom. I won't be able to assist you now. Luffy spoke firmly. He still had his own adventure, his own war, and he knew that his brother could hold on until then, or they should come to him, but he was sure that Whitebeard's crew would not abandon Whitebeard's lands. I understand. Vista murmured. The revolutionaries are helping us in some ways, but with the meeting of all the kings happening soon, they are preparing for that and will not be able to help us much, the man commented. Yes, that meeting will happen soon, and it seems that the world government changed its date. which is no surprise with the world as chaotic as it is. Luffy commented calmly. Do you believe we can protect our territories? Vista couldn't help but comment with a bit of discouragement. Let's be honest, Vista. You can't face the Yonkos. But I can help you. Luffy said with a firm tone. You're talking about. Vista murmured. Yes. I want you to come under my flag. This way, I will use all my strength to help you and protect the territories left by Whitebeard. You will become my people. Luffy said firmly while opening a smile in front of his proposal. After all, this was one of his plans in the New World, to integrate Whitebeard's fleet, when the same man had asked him to take care of his children in this very palace more than a year ago, so it was time to start executing it with one of the members coming to talk to him. I can't make such a decision so easily for others. Vista admitted. I understand, but you still expected me to say exactly this. After all, we are pirates of the sea. It was obvious if you want my help, you would have to join my crew and fleet, but you are not here to accept it so easily, so I take the risk of saying that Marco sent you here to know exactly my plans for the future. Luffy said with a smile. Yes. Vista murmured, admitting exactly what Luffy wanted. After all, they wouldn't accept working for another leader without the same concepts that made them create Whitebeard's crew. That's good, because listen carefully, Vista. I'm going to tell exactly my plans for the New World and for the future of all the seas of this world. Luffy began, while Vista stayed in that room listening to each of Luffy's words, with wide eyes. Chapter 379, Fishman Island Again 02. Third-person POV. Fishman Island. I know why you're here. Luffy commented while he was in a corner of the castle. But it's complicated. Jinbei murmured, approaching Luffy as they both stood alone. Do you really think we can help them while there are two Yonkos wanting war with us? Luffy asked seriously. Jinbei fell silent, understanding his reasoning. It's not that I don't want to help them, but we have something important to resolve. I also hope that Marco will listen to my proposal. If they want to join me, there will be no problems since Whitebeard spoke to me, Luffy said. Alright, you're right. Let's first finish off our enemies, and once we defeat them, we can help them, Jinbei murmured at the end. Exactly, now stop this melancholic talk and let's meet with the others. After all, we are pirates and we need to enjoy each of the feasts offered to us, especially since this might be the last one we can enjoy in peace. Luffy spoke, knowing things would get much more intense, as he headed to the main hall with Jinbei behind. Vista left the island as soon as their conversation ended, not wanting to stay for the banquet, as he wanted to return as soon as possible to his companions in the New World, with the ship on the other side of the island, ready to set sail. He would carry the message to Marco, something he could not transmit through the Den Den Mushi, because it was very important. He what? Luffy heard a huge shout standing out among all the noise of the banquet. My husband already has 5 children. They are so cute, so adorable. There are 3 girls and 2 boys. I also want to be a mommy like mommy. Shirahoshi spoke her wish with no shame to her family, while her brothers and father looked stunned at her. Listen, Shira, since when do you think these things? You should be innocent as you always were. Neptune continued complaining while Shirahoshi just smiled. I want to be a mother. I want to have my children with my husband. She declared with determination. This triggered Neptune's tears. Why? Why has my daughter been corrupted like this? My sweet daughter now wants to become a mother. He screamed, crying. What is this screaming? Please, we are at the banquet, not at a funeral. Luffy murmured, approaching the place. This is all your fault. Neptune and the 3 brothers shouted angrily at the cause of their distress. What do you expect? Shira and I are husband and wife. It's normal to want children, after all, that's why people get married. Luffy complained. But Shira should be innocent. She should remain a virgin until her 30s, no. Until her 50s, 80s, she should die a virgin, my beloved daughter. Neptune began to exclaim while Luffy looked at him like an idiot. This father is a lunatic, only my daughters lived their entire lives as virgins, Luffy murmured quietly as he approached Shirahoshi, taking her by the waist and bringing her closer, giving a kiss on her forehead. "Don't worry, we'll have a bunch of kids when things calm down." Luffy spoke, with his wife looking at him with a sparkle in her eyes. She smiled while wrapping her arms around his neck and giving him a kiss on his lips. "Yes," she murmured, not minding as her whole family fell to the ground, defeated after hearing their words. "Shirahoshi!" they exclaimed as if their souls had left their bodies. Nami, Alvida, Nojiko, and Baby 5 looked at this interaction with some desire. After all, they were also non-pregnant wives and all shared the desire to be mothers. Even Lami and Reija looked at each other without any intention of fighting, appearing to enter a melancholic atmosphere. Luffy felt the jealousy of his females with this, sensing the emotions with his haki, but that was a private conversation. "Let's continue the banquet," Luffy exclaimed, as he joined Usopp, Chopper, Bippo, and the others. You. Have you ever thought about joining my crew?" Luffy suddenly looked at Neptune's whale, while he didn't know what to respond. "Don't steal my animal too," Neptune immediately exclaimed. The banquet continued, and Luffy ended up going to Shira's room, which was very spacious. "Shira, today we will make love in a different way," Luffy declared as the atmosphere grew tense at that moment. "Luffy," she murmured as her giant breasts swayed. After all, she was already naked when Luffy brought her here. "We have some time before the others come here," Luffy said and began to change as well, his body growing to 20 meters too. "Today I want to fuck in giant form," Luffy declared with a mischievous smile, and Shira seemed excited as she opened up for her approaching husband. In the next moment, the entire castle was enveloped in small tremors that continued for the next hour. The next day, Luffy met with all the others at Suraya Cafe, where he found the male members of his crew there too. "I'm losing my soul here. Yahohoho!" Brook exclaimed as he was grabbed by a mermaid. "Here, Mr. Skeleton, a bit of milk," the mermaid said as she fed him through the mouth. "I'm in heaven," Brook murmured before starting to laugh. "Here, cutie." Another mermaid handed a cotton candy to Chopper. "Don't call me cute, you damn," Chopper exclaimed as his body turned into a wave of happiness. "Here's your cola." Another mermaid handed a cola to Frankie. "Super thanks," Frankie exclaimed. "Well, they seem very well, maybe I'll just go back to Ryugu Castle," Luffy murmured, watching Cammy also working along with the other mermaids. "Luffy-san," she exclaimed as Luffy smiled. In the end, Luffy let his crew enjoy the island that day and returned to the palace, while he had an important meeting with Neptune and the others. Now Captain Straw Hat stood in front of Neptune, with Jinbei and Shirahoshi alongside Luffy. "After our actions on the surface, things will calm down a bit. I doubt anyone would normally dare to breach the island's defenses. But as a precaution, I want you to send a large group of soldiers for training as soon as we move Skypiea to the New World," Luffy spoke seriously. "Yes," Neptune responded in the same tone, trusting Luffy for the island's protection. "About the event that's happening this year?" Neptune asked while Luffy seemed a bit thoughtful about it. "The Levely, also known as the World Council, with the meeting of all the countries subordinate to the government." Luffy couldn't help but think about this event. It's better if you don't participate. After all, Shirahoshi might be a target because of her relationship with me and her power. The one who rules the world must already be aware that she has the power of an ancient weapon," Luffy said, as everyone in the room looked on with raised eyebrows. "What do you mean by the one who rules the world?" murmured Neptune. "The empty throne of Mary Geos is not unoccupied. Someone has been ruling the world from the shadows for 800 years, the 5 Gorosei kneel before him, you know what that means. But be careful talking about this elsewhere, after all, it could kill you," Luffy warned, as he couldn't imagine what the world government would do to try and control this situation, even with his ability to threaten them. "What do you mean? Are you saying that someone has been controlling the world all this time?" Neptune asked, while Jinbei and Shirahoshi looked at Luffy with surprised eyes. "Yes, I don't know who he is and exactly why he hides in the shadows. After all, the world government has enough power to annihilate everyone, if it wanted to. They possess an ancient weapon, Uranos, Luffy declared. The room fell silent at this moment. One of the ancient weapons, Neptune murmured, unable to take his eyes off his daughter. At this moment, I know what you're thinking, Luffy continued. Yes, Shirahoshi is one of the ancient weapons, but they operate differently. While Uranos is above the sky, Pluton is at sea level, and Shirahoshi's power is below the sea. All of them function differently, but both are nonetheless the greatest weapons of mass destruction, Luffy explained. My power. Luffy? Shirahoshi murmured, a bit worried. She no longer calls anyone with Sama, much less to her husband, with whom she had greater intimacy. It doesn't matter now, the world will go to war and we must be strong. Until then, Shira will be ready, and I will protect her with my life. Luffy spoke with determination. Now about that person on the empty throne, we will find out more on our journey and fight him in the final war, Luffy said. I wanted to move them now to the surface, but let's wait until things calm down. Besides, in the future, Shira will take over the governance of this island, Luffy said, having made it clear to Shira from the beginning that she was the true ruler of this island. Luffy. Shira tried to protest. No, he's right. Shira, you were born to govern this country. You are the one who possesses the power of Poseidon, only you can truly guide us. Neptune had to admit, after all, the line of succession ended when a mermaid was born with this power, just as it happened 800 years ago. Now let's talk about the current world. Luffy continued. As we know, the Marine headquarters is now in the New World. Sakazuki is the fleet admiral, while Kuzan has left the Marines. He's probably with Blackbeard right now, but that doesn't matter. New admirals have been called, and it seems the damn Green Bull survived Shirahoshi's attack, Luffy said. He was thinking about the newspapers he had read over the last year, where there was a note about the new admirals joining the Marines, alongside Kizaru, the only one who remains in the same position. Fujitora and Green Bull were hailed as true heroes, as the Navy tried to regain the lost morale, and indeed, it recovered a bit. The sailors were much more active than during the original works timeskip. What do you plan for the Levely, since we're not participating? Neptune asked at the end. None of my kingdoms will be sent to marry Geos. This will certainly enrage the government, but we can handle this so that none of my kingdoms are affected. Even if the government imposes sanctions, trade between my territories will continue, so don't worry about resources being cut off from the island. Luffy spoke confidently, as everyone felt it. Anyway, enough with plans. Let's get ready to leave. We no longer have time to stay on this island, he declared at the end, preparing to finally depart for the New World. Chapter 380, Reception of the New World. 01. Third-person POV. Fishman Island. Black Pearl was already anchored on the other side of the island, ready to head towards the New World. The footsteps continued as more and more crew members boarded the ship, preparing to depart for the New World. Goodbye, mermaids and fishmen. Lucy exclaimed excitedly on the ship, waving to the entire crowd on the island waiting for them to depart. Farewell, friends, she shouted. Meanwhile, Shirahoshi was still with her family, saying goodbye to each of them, giving a small hug. Take care, daughter. You can call your daddy anytime you need help. Don't let that man you call a husband corrupt you even more. Neptune almost cried as his daughter departed. Stop it, Dad. I'm going now. We'll see each other soon, she said quickly, before flying to the ship. It looks like we're ready. Luffy looked at the dozens of members already on the ship. His gaze fell on a group that had been forgotten. What was Two Piece doing while we were at Ryugu Palace? Luffy asked curiously. After all, he had just left them aside and went to Neptune's house. They stayed on the ship. Seems like we forgot about them, Hugo said nearby. We were left aside. Everyone murmured sadly. Anyway. Luffy left them aside once again and returned to Jimbei, heading for the ship's helm. It's finally time for us to depart. Nami, keep an eye on the route. Let's go. Yes. Nami said while reviewing all the magnetic points she had from the first islands of the New World. The ship finally began to depart, leaving the port, while Lucy, Perona Bonnie, Rebecca were at the edge of the ship saying goodbye to everyone after making many friendships on the island. "Goodbye, Mermaid-san," Brooke also exclaimed beside them. "My eyes cry from missing you, even though I have no eyes anymore." Yah-ho-ho-ho. The ship quickly began to touch the island's boundary bubble. As it left, the coating protected the vessel, descending back to the sea floor. And everyone could see the ship beginning to stabilize and move, gaining speed and starting to ascend to the surface, thus beginning their journey to the New World. Meanwhile, Black Pearl continued to advance, moving away from the island of the Fishmen, near the waters of the New World. Some pirates who had left the island of Fishmen a few hours earlier were also advancing and finally approaching the surface. "We're finally getting there, men," the captain of this ship exclaimed, raising his scimitar high, excited. "Yes," came the collective shout soon after as his men waited for them to finally enter the New World. One of the crew members approached the captain at this moment, cautiously. "Captain, are you sure we shouldn't have tried to talk to the Straw Hats?" he said carefully to his captain. "It doesn't matter now. Besides, we're going to be greater than them. We will conquer power and wealth in this sea, and find the One Piece. We will not be subordinate to anyone," the captain affirmed. After all, despite everyone knowing the great pirate that is the Straw Hats, many wanted to be free and fight for it. They were getting closer to the surface until they finally emerged, as the sea water rose in front of them with the ship. "We are finally in the New World," the man exclaimed. And just as the water began to lower with the sound of the ship's coating bursting, the most dangerous sea in the world appeared in front of them. However, it was not quite as they had imagined, despite a huge storm with waves exploding in the sea being much larger than their ships with a rain of lightning. All crew members quickly saw what was in front of them with the light of the thunder and widened their eyes. "Captain, what is this? This shouldn't be here. We're dead. How can we fight against these things?" Exclamations began throughout the crew as they looked ahead in despair. Even the captain, looking at it, had to swallow hard in front of this situation. Ahead, there were at least 200 ships with world government flags, all forming a blockade line for the sea, while only that meager pirate ship was there, facing a force assembled with multiple unique callbusters. "Well, it looks like we have a fool in front of us," a member of CP0 in a white suit remarked disdainfully as they continued to await the arrival of their target, with only small-time pirates showing up so far. "Just another small fish," another agent beside him commented. "Just eliminate them," the CP0 agent ordered. The pirates quickly saw the cannons beginning to move and aim at them, with a portion of those ships doing so, but there were dozens of cannons while they were surrounded, leaving the pirates in even more despair. "Damn! We need to get out of here quickly," immediately, one of the pirates shouted. "Back to the water, make the ship submerge," the captain urgently demanded with all his might. "But, Captain, we can't. We already burst the coating as soon as we entered the sea," another pirate replied. As they were in despair, suddenly, an explosion emerged from one of the ships, and something flew up from the sea like a missile. The CP0 agent looked at it and sighed behind his mask, while his gaze returned to the back, where there were two machines in the middle of the deck. "I forgot we don't have control over these things, and they act on their own anyway. Cancel the cannons, they will take care of the pirates." The agent gave the order. The robot continued flying as it soared into the sky with flames propelling from its stalls, quickly approaching above the pirate ship. "Hey, what is that thing?" "Is it the Shichibukai Kuma?" someone exclaimed, recognizing it. As the pirates could not get more desperate and trapped, that thing, which was actually a pacifist and not the Shichibukai, pointed at them with the palm of its hand, which immediately glowed with a laser being charged. The pirates barely had time to react before the entire ship exploded, leaving nothing but wreckage in the middle of the sea. "Will more idiots like these keep appearing until our target arrives?" the government agent spoke. The pacifist returned to the ship from which it had come, landing next to one of its kin. On those 200 government ships, there were at least 2 pacifists. It was a much more powerful military force than a mere call-buster. This was the world government's first test against the Straw Hats, waiting for them to appear at any moment to see if they would test the limits of the crew. Meanwhile, Black Pearl continued to approach the surface. However, they were facing a rather peculiar moment, while hundreds of giant whales raced through the sea. Even Laboon was released to swim with its kind, which were also proportionate in size to her, with her only standing out with her forehead full of scars. "Go Laboon!" Brooke exclaimed joyfully while most of the crew seemed enchanted by the moment. "So many whales!" Lucy said. "Amazing," Chopper shouted with enchanted eyes. The exclamations continued across the deck as the more emotional members continued to admire the sight, and Luffy could hear this from his captain's cabin. He took the opportunity before finally emerging in the New World to check some things while marking some things on a map of the beginning of the New World made by the world government, while trying to mark his trajectory. "You're not going to Dressrosa, are you?" Luffy was interrupted by a voice suddenly. Looking up, he saw Monet, who was in a corner with a book pressing against her breasts. No. Luffy would not open war with Dressrosa. After all, Kaido would not strain to protect that country even with the Smile Factory. He knows that a fight in Wano will be more advantageous for him and Big Mom, so Luffy will do some things before returning to Dressrosa. "I will send Rebecca, Kairos, Lamy, and Hugo. They will be enough to clear the country of its old crew," Luffy commented to Monet, who seemed to have a slight tremor in her lips. Luffy sighed at this, before looking seriously at her. "I know you're worried about your sister, but, as I said, I can't let her go free. I need her ability to be confiscated. But I can spare her life for you, but she will be constantly monitored or even using sea stone all the time, for the rest of her life," Luffy said. "Okay." Monet murmured. Though she had been given to the crew a year ago, she had truly become a part of it, and worked seriously for Luffy, recognizing him as the one who will be the king of the pirates. She saw herself working one moment and the next, moaning as she gave herself body and soul in bed while he entered her. Luffy had more than her admiration. Monet had also fallen in love with this man. Her face quickly turned red as she approached the table, pushing the captain's agent aside, while she moved closer to him, touching his chest, trying to seduce him. Luffy looked surprised at the woman as she brushed a feather to the side while sitting on top of him. "You can leave that for later. I want to thank you for sparing my sister's life," Monet said in a seductive tone. Luffy ended up doing so while grabbing her ass and starting to remove her clothes, leaving her in a bra, which he soon removed, and the woman herself pulled down her skirt and unzipped him. The ship continued after that, while Luffy had the green-haired woman bouncing on top of him for the next few minutes. "Let's try this." Luffy touched her. "Moa Moa no Mi, pleasure, apply 4 times," he commented. "Ah!" the woman quickly exclaimed uncontrollably, feeling an explosion of pleasure. "I have to be careful with this, otherwise they might get used to it just like that." Luffy couldn't help but murmur as he watched the woman scream throughout the cabin and sit on Luffy now as if her life depended on it. Luffy had increased the powers of his Moa Moa no Mi as soon as she returned. He didn't have the peak of it to increase something 400 times like he did in Marineford, or even she fully recovered, but he managed to unlock many other areas that his fruit could act on. One of them was the senses. Sex had gone to another level when he used this, but he limited its use so no one would depend only on that. After all, it could be almost like a drug. Luffy finally left the cabin 30 minutes later, while Monet was in a makeshift bed by Luffy sleeping with a small smile. "Well, looks like we're arriving. Time to return Laboon." Luffy spoke as the whale was now alone next to the ship. After reducing its size and her returning to the ship, the surface continued to approach. "That?" Luffy murmured, and Usopp was also surprised by this, while the others with slightly lesser observation Haki quickly also realized. Luffy wasted no time scanning the force that was waiting for them on the surface. "Prepare for battle," he exclaimed, and this immediately caught everyone's attention. Even those with mediocre observation Haki and feeling nothing, quickly prepared for battle as their captain said, while all the members grabbed their weapons waiting for the ship to emerge. The surface was finally reached as the ship jumped up from the water, with the coating bursting and with the storm still happening. Everyone saw the 200 world government ships waiting for them like a barrier to prevent them from continuing to navigate the waters of the New World. That's it for this part. Thank you for listening to What If There Was a Different Luffy. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe.